United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated.
Remember to silence your cell phones if you have them, especially the county auditor. Thank you. Item 1 is approval of the agenda. I'll move it. Second by Taylor. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 2 through 5 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items passed unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the September 24th meeting. Item 3 is approval of the claims. Item 4 from the county treasurer includes A, approved property tax refund request for parcel ending in 021 in the amount of $318, and B, approved property tax refund request for parcel ending in 001 in the amount of $648. 5 from Human Resources is approval of retiree request to remain on the county dental insurance. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second?
Second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We're a few minutes ahead of our set times, so let's go ahead with beginning to read number 8. This is from Safe Place. Stephanie Pickenpaw is representing. This is approval of and presentation of proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'll go ahead and read that. This says, whereas domestic violence is a serious crime affecting individuals and families in all Siouxland communities, all races, ages, income levels, lifestyles, and genders, and in fact is probably affecting someone you know. In every 9 seconds, someone experiences the crime of domestic violence. And whereas 1 in 3 women and 1 in 9 men will be a victim of violence in their lifetime, domestic violence violates an individual's human rights by destroying dignity, security, and self-worth due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control or abuse. Safe Place works every day to help end these acts of violence and to help rebuild the lives of the survivors. And whereas in Siouxland, Safe Place is available 24 hours a day, every day of the year, and last year responded to nearly 2,000 victims fleeing domestic abuse, and despite high census and a global pandemic, no one in an unsafe situation was turned away. And whereas the impact of domestic violence affects all of the members of the community, and only a coordinated community response will put a stop to these atrocious crimes and ensure funding is continually available to provide these life-saving services. Now therefore, the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim this month of October 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Woodbury County, Iowa, and urge all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled events and programs and to think about the fact that it is someone you know. Be it so resolved this first day of October 2024.
I would move approval.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. Is Stephanie here to say a couple words? I apologize, we're up against a set time, so if you want to say a few words, that's certainly all right.
Thank you. Everybody in Woodbury County deserves safety in their home and community, and each of us play a role in achieving that. While some agencies respond to violence, it takes strong leadership and a united community to drive the cultural change needed to end it. To address violence effectively, we must understand its root cause and meet the immediate needs of victims. Domestic violence is a deliberate pattern of power and control. Abusers may excuse their actions, but at its core, it's a conscious choice. This reflects the need for a cultural shift where respect and equality replace entitlement to harm. Leadership is key to fostering a culture that rejects violence and supports safety for all. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is an opportunity for leadership and action. By stepping up, we can reshape harmful norms and break the cycle of abuse. It's a moment for our community to come together and create a lasting change. I also have purple ribbons for all of you, and it talks about the importance of wearing a purple ribbon for Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Thank you very much for your work. Hearing no other discussion on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. We now return to item 6A. This is our 4:35 PM set time. This is a public hearing and sale of property parcel also known as 900 Cornelia Street. Before we receive bids, the public hearing is now open for anyone who wishes to speak for or against the sale of this property. Seeing none, I'll move the public hearing be closed. Second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We're now open to receive bids. If you'd like to bid on this property, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and your opening bid.
Hello, Nick Noyes, 210 West Amherst, Marcus, Iowa, at minimum of $100.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to bid on this property?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the property be sold to Mr. Noyes for the minimum bid.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Heather will be helping anyone that's successful in their bidding. Thank you. Item 6B is our 4:37 PM set time. This is a public hearing and sale of property parcel, also known as 931 Cornelia Street. Once again, the public hearing is open before we receive bids for anyone who'd like to speak for or against the sale of this property.
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We're now open to receive bids. If anyone would like to bid on this property, please approach the microphone with your name and address and opening bid.
Nick Noyes, 210 West Amherst, Marcus, Iowa, minimum bid $100.
Thank you. $100. Is there anyone else to bid on this property?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public property be sold to Mr. Noyes for $100.
Second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 6C is our 4:39 PM set time. This is a public hearing and sale of property parcel, also known as 917 Glass Street. The public hearing is now open for anyone who wishes to speak for or against the sale of this property.
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We're now open to receive bidding on this property.
Nick Noyes, 210 West Amherst, Marcus, Iowa, minimum bid $100.
Thank you. Minimum bid is of $100. Was bid. Is there anyone else to bid on this property?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the property be sold to Mr. Noyes for the minimum bid.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6D is our 4:41 PM set time. This is a public hearing and sale of property parcel, also known as 208 14th Street. Public hearing is now open for anyone who wishes to speak for or against the sale of this property. Before we receive bids, is there anyone to speak for or against the sale? We'll receive bids after this.
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Now we're open for bidding. If you'd like to bid, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and your bid.
I'm here on behalf of someone else. You want my address or her address?
The party that's purchasing, if you're representing the party that's
Meg
purchasing.
Andrews, 259 Whitney Way, San Francisco, California.
Okay. And the opening bid?
300.
Okay. Bid has been made for 300. Is there anyone else to bid? Please state your name and address.
Shannara Ken, give me your address. My address,
Yeah, your address.
2601 McDonald Street, Sioux City, Iowa, 51104.
Opening bid, 400.
Thank you.
500,
8
2,000,
and 2.
2,200,
2,300.
2,500,
2,600.
3,000,
3,500.
4,000,
Okay. High bid is 4,000.
Hearing no other bids, I move that the property be sold to, is Ms. Andrews?
Meg Andrews.
Yeah, for the $4,000 bid.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7 now from Planning and Zoning. Mr. Priestley. We are a couple minutes ahead of our open public hearing. Mr. Priestley, if you'd like to give a few minutes of recap for us.
Yes, Dan Priestley, zoning coordinator. This would be the third week of the public hearing to look at changes to the wind commercial energy systems ordinance. We're looking at safety data sheets that have been a part of our setback discussion on the 3,280 feet or kilometer from the respective property lines. The amendments that are listed address the setbacks, of course, decommissioning, and basically reclassifying the non-participating property line within the respective ordinance. We haven't had, other than, of course, our engagement here at the public hearings, we haven't had a lot of comments come to the staff, but I did receive last night around 5:30 p.m. comments from Mid-American requesting that those be entered into the public record, and I would ask the board to maybe consider receiving those.
Move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Okay, but other than what we've received from the public, I don't have any major information to add based on what we've gleaned from the last couple of weeks. So,
Okay. Thank you. So the way, the process for this public hearing, this is the third and final public hearing. Following this, we'll have a vote on the approval of the third reading, and then after that, we will be able to vote to adopt the ordinance officially. So item A is to conduct the third and final public hearing on proposed revisions to Woodbury County Ordinance Number 56, including amending sections 5.2D, 6.1A, 6.2, 7, and 7.1C, which regulate commercial wind energy conversion systems in unincorporated Woodbury County. The amendments address changes to the CWECS application process, submission requirements, siting and design standards, including setbacks, protected areas, setback waiver limitations, as well as updates to discontinuance and decommissioning plan requirements. If you would like to speak to the board and inform us of your opinion on this item, the public hearing is now open. For those who wish to come, please state your name and address and give your statement.
My name's Lyle Fixie. I live in Kingsley, Iowa, but our farm is in Woodbury County, located smack dab in the middle of Pearson, Mobile, Correctionville, and Hampton. I just don't want to be treated differently than landowners in other parts of the state. Our farm to me is a business. This is an investment opportunity or an income opportunity, and I just feel it's unfair for landowners in this county to be treated differently than landowners in other part of Iowa. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak?
Hey, my name is Jeff Moss. I live on 2388 Ida Avenue. Doubt that many of you people have even driven past this place. We're pretty remote. I've been there for almost 35 years. In that amount of time, in an 8-mile stretch, we've lost 8 houses and building sites. This proves that people are not clamoring to move to the country. The only ones left on that 8-mile stretch are me and my neighbor up the hill. We all seem to want renewable energy, which is a great thing as long as it is not in your backyard. Well, it is not in your backyard, it is in my backyard. I don't agree with people living in the city having a say in how a farmer in the country can farm his ground. Many of you live in communities that have homeowners associations. My fellow farmers and I are not allowed input into your HOA process, which is probably a good thing. Otherwise, most of your houses would probably be painted purple. The income that's generated by these wind turbines will mostly be spent in Woodbury County, meaning that I'm the guy that they're going to put the turbine on my property. I live in Woodbury County. All that income will be spent here and taxed here. I don't think we need to put any more restrictions on wind energy than we already have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Brittany Vandermolen, 3345 245th Street, Anthony, Iowa. I spoke to you guys before when you were going through this, and everyone here is talking about money. And I want you to stop and think about the health and the wellness of the people who live in this community. So research has showed that the wind turbines produce a vibration, and that vibration is affecting how our animals are reproducing. Their cells are not that much different than ours. So when their cells vibrate and their animals are not able to produce offspring that are healthy, they're coming out with double noses, disformed beaks, club feet, those type of things. We have to think from a biological standpoint also that we're talking about our human cells and how our cells divide and how our children are going to be growing in this type of environment and reproductive cells. So I said this to you last time and I'll say it again. So if you guys don't continue to push back these turbines from our homes, you're risking the health of the individuals that live in our community. And so my daughter is 9, my son is 11. So when it comes to fruition that they can't have children because we have wind turbines beside us, are you guys willing to risk that and be willing to come to my children and explain to them that your decision to do that and not protect them, are you okay with that? That's what I'm asking you. Are you okay with those possibilities for the children of Woodbury County? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kelsey Ballard, Mid-American Energy Company, our local address, 401 Douglas, right up the street. From what we've heard the last couple of weeks, you are seeking written recommendations from wind turbine manufacturers regarding what they consider to be a safe distance from a wind turbine during an extreme weather event. You have requested safety information similar to the Nordex page that was provided to this board. We believe you referred to that last week as a safety data sheet. I reached out this week to the 3 turbine manufacturers that we have in our fleet, asking them for comments to address this. I shared those with you in what was sent last night, but I'm just going to go over a couple of the highlights here today. So from GE Vernova, their recommendation is general siting considerations that Mid-American is already familiar with. Look at potential hazards within a distance of 1.1 times the tip height. They specifically mention this includes ice throw, falling objects, and blade failure. Vestas, their technicians are instructed to clear an area to a minimum radius of 500 meters during such event. And then Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy, they provided their entire storm packet. I won't read that, but I will mention that it talks about evacuating a turbine and seeking shelter in a safe location, such as a passenger vehicle. So Mid-American has been safely operating generation units and serving customers in the Woodbury County area and surrounding counties for decades. We rely on wind turbine operating history when siting wind turbines, and after 2 decades of operating wind turbines, are happy to again point out our perfect safety record with regard to the public. That's a record that hasn't happened by accident. As was mentioned last week, we're trained about safety at Mid-American. I think the comment was specifically using a spotter for backing, which we do. So with this well-documented safety record in focus, and more than 400 of my coworkers and their friends and family living right here in the county, why would you expect anything less than for Mid-American to make recommendations that would result in continuing to serve this community with safe wind generation? You have colleagues and peers across the state that are dealing with similar challenges, safely siting wind turbines and developing those setbacks. We hope that you have reached out to them for some of their feedback. We haven't heard about those conversations, but what we think you might hear is some of the positive impacts wind turbines have had on their landowners, their communities, and the things that they have been able to do with those property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor,
May I ask a question of the Mid-American representative, or would you prefer that
are you
to be
willing
later?
to take a question?
Yep, I didn't know if you wanted me to do that now or after the public part. Sure.
I appreciate it very much. So we received this. I actually made copies for the public, and we've received it into the record. So
Thank you.
just want to make sure that I'm understanding. GE Vernova is saying that the potential hazards for ice, throw, falling objects, blade failure are 1.1 times tip height. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you believe that that's an appropriate distance for setbacks?
I know that we have wind turbines currently operating in Iowa safely
At
that
1.1 times tip height?
contemplate a 1.1 times tip height.
Very, very helpful, because I didn't understand why Mid-American, and it's just, the light came on last night, no pun intended, that originally Mid-American was talking about 660 feet for setbacks from homes. So it's very, very helpful to know. But my issue is Vestas says if there's any sort of incident, the technicians are instructed to clear the area to a minimum radius of 500 meters. Do you see how these two don't add up? In other words, if you have technicians in the area, get at least 1,500 feet away. But Mid-American originally came to us and said 660 feet from your home is okay. So I'm actually appreciative that you've shared this, because the incidents that we're hearing about are 4.74 times tip height, that there was debris in Allendorf and other areas. So in other words, if it's 2,564 feet that you have debris thrown, and you're admitting by your Vestas material that you've got to be at least 1,500 feet away, how is 660 even reasonable?
So to be clear,
Okay?
Vestas guides their technicians to the radius of 500 meters. That's not my recommendation. You guys asked for direct feedback from the turbine manufacturers, or that's what we thought you were looking for. So we provided their information as you asked for. That's not
So do you
from us.
disagree with that 1,500? Do you think that's way too much? 660 is much more reasonable to place something that's twice the size of the Statue of Liberty?
I believe that our turbines that exist today and have for decades continue to be safely sited. I also understand a balanced ordinance and using a variety of data points and real-world information to create those. You mentioned the event up in Osceola County, I believe. I did quite a bit of calling around about that the last couple of weeks. I was not able to sort of fact check that information with the landowner or turbine owner. That's something that I would encourage you all, you're very tuned in to these real numbers from our turbine manufacturers. Continue to seek that real world operating data and information. The Vestas, for example, just uses 500 meters as a we got a couple of sentences from them, right? So the things that matter in these safety numbers are more of the breadth of instruction. I feel like in some cases, we're just picking out a distance and trying to apply it to everything, and that may not be how their technicians are instructed to work in a real world requirement. So we're trying to put something in black and white to try and answer this ask, I guess. These turbine manufacturers had a lot of questions about what you were looking for. I tried to be helpful and get something we could provide to you. I don't have any additional information about context or that type of thing. So again, I can speak to our real world operating experience. And that is that the 1.1 times turbine height has been effective and kept the public safe.
So the 660 feet away from which you were originally asking us to cite from homes.
Yep.
Okay, so that is very, very helpful because, again, Vestas is probably wanting to mitigate a little liability and saying to their technicians, you have to be at least 1,500 feet away. And our homeowners, when you're asking 660 feet, I just think that's illuminating, helpful. It's the only two data points we have, but I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I've got a question. Since she brought up Osceola County, I did speak with their board chairman up there.
Okay.
We actually had a very long conversation. That was a Vestas wind turbine that was up there. About 2 months ago, we were presented data from the public, and actually this information was also in a House hearing in the state capitol back in January. So this has been out for quite some time. So my question for you is it better to go off of real data or estimates from manufacturers or from Mid-American as far as safety?
Better in what way?
What's more reliable? Looking at an event that's actually happened and digesting that information, or speculation such as studies or things of that nature. Because the problem that we have right here is that Vestas turbine up in Osceola County, it threw debris at a factor of 4.27 times tower height. So when GE says 1.1 and Vestas themselves says 2.7, and Siemens says 2.7.
I'm not following those
1640,
numbers.
so their number is 1640 as far as a setback, but on a 600-foot tower, that's a ratio of 2.77 times tower height.
Yeah, I just asked for onshore turbine information. So the information that was provided is not, to my knowledge, specific to a turbine model, turbine height, et cetera. So I don't know that corresponds to a factor for them.
Sure. But you see what I'm saying, that we've got hold in your hand. They went out and they sent drones up, took pictures, they measured everything. They picked up every piece of debris, measured it, photographed, weighed it. And you're saying, ignore the data. Listen to what we have because we have an impeccable safety record. That's kind of like me. Maybe we've got a bunch of the deputies here in the room. I'll serve notice to them that I have an impeccable driving record. I've got no accidents and no tickets. So therefore, Sheriff Sheehan, I should be immune from any seatbelt or speed limit postings because I'm a safe driver. We are looking at the data, and what's concerning is when you look at Nordex with the data that they have a ratio of 5.45, which would be greater than 4.27. So there's a little cushion there. You see, I'm saying what you've provided us is 1.1 and 2.77, which is almost half of a real-life event. So explain to me why we would use a 1.1 or a 2.77 when 70 miles up the road here was a 4.27 throw.
I definitely don't have all of the details that you have, but I have experience working with over 4,000 landowners on over 3,000 turbines.
And you've never had any
looking at
blades
that
come off?
data. What's that?
You've never had any blades come off?
We have had blades come off.
Okay, so it's not really a perfect safety record.
With regard to the public and injuries, it is.
So
as
what
far
if,
as I
what
know.
if public roads? our fences, our livestock, our outbuildings, anything like that. I mean, obviously, to value human life is number one. I agree with that. But I think the argument being made here today is that these things can throw so far that you are now inflicting harm on neighbors who want no part of this project. And that is not property rights. If someone wants this on their property, all for it. I'm a farmer. I fight for property rights all the time. But the footprint of these things are so large that you are shedding the risk onto people who are not participating. And that is a form of eminent domain, which this board has fought long and hard against on this carbon pipeline. And so I'm also disappointed that we asked for safety data sheets and we have, quote, comments from turbine manufacturers.
Okay, so can we talk about safety data sheets for a second? So my understanding is that OSHA oversees safety data sheets. That's a defined regulatory term. I've looked at the OSHA white paper on what a safety data sheet is. It is for hazardous chemicals. So to be clear, a wind turbine does not have, in and of itself, an OSHA safety data sheet on the form that they govern.
I'm going to read to you 4 safety sheets found. This is from a Vestas instruction manual. Reference number for document 0001-0410, personal protective equipment sheets, relevant safety data sheets for the chemicals used in this document. 004-4159, standardized procedure risk assessment. Document 0036-5891, safety regulations for operators and technicians. Document 0052-0258, health, safety, environment risk analysis on access to wind turbines. So these documents exist far outside the realm of just chemicals. And we've asked for this. He started it 2 years ago. So, no further questions.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak?
Daniel Hare, 2889 Humboldt Avenue, Hornick, Iowa. Holy cow, I don't know where to start after this Mid-American representative here. First of all, this is such an important project to them. Where's the big shots at? In my opinion, they're in Urbandale hiding in their gated community. They don't want to show up because they can't answer the questions. They got the interns here trying to answer questions and they can't answer questions. First of all, I want to respond to some questions that were brought up here to you guys. The supervisors are responding to our rural residents and farmers' request. I'm a farmer. I'm a landowner. My dad's a landowner. The rest of my extended family are landowners in Woodbury County. We wouldn't sign a 40-year lease for $100,000 per turbine in this county. There's some things money can't buy. Second of all, this is a question for Miss Mid-American back here. How many turbines do you guys have in Ida County?
Yes, I'm sorry, you're supposed to address the chair.
Okay,
So
do you
we don't
guys
have
know
any.
how many turbines Mid-American has in Ida County? Probably not, but she brought up property taxes. Well, let's talk about property taxes. So guess what? Over in Ida County, Mid-American turbines all over the place. They had the 5th highest property tax hike in the state of Iowa this year. So where's their property tax release from these turbines? It's non-existent. That's a lie right there. Second of all, the easements that Mr. Philippi referred to at hearing number 1, over 80% of those easements that were signed up here in Woodbury County of the land, over 80% of them are outside of the county, outside of the state, or in town. So I don't think much of that money is going to stay in this county. Just wanted to address that. Also, I got some bad news for Mid-American. I mean, they may think they have a good safety record, but it's wishful thinking. I'm going to let them know here again right now that they have turbines way too close to Highway 20, headed east, and Stewart, Iowa, near Interstate 80. It's a matter of time before one of those blades comes off or chucks some ice and kills someone on Highway 20 or Interstate 80. So I'm warning you guys publicly again about that. Mid-American's recommendations are only, their setback recommendations are only based on padding their pockets. They know that if they can't get this magic number, they can't cram these 600-foot turbines in high populated areas. And guess what? Woodbury County is a very high population density out here in the rural part of the county. They're trying to shove a square peg in a round hole, and it's not right. I know you guys don't always see eye to eye with one another, but you guys do several things right. You listen to us and you get along when it matters, and I sure appreciate that. And right now, this is a serious matter. We got serious safety concerns. You guys have listened to us, and I ask you keep it up, and you please enact this third hearing, and we pass this ordinance amendments. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Larry Philippi, Anthony, Iowa. I'd be remiss if I didn't come up and speak again. This has been ongoing for a couple of years. Sometimes it's deja vu. It's been repeated. I don't know if there's a lot of thick heads or what, but we talked about the 80% of the landowners not even living on the land. Last week, Councilman Bittinger received an email, and I knew the individual's name that was on that email. They have land that's half-mile north of me, back a half-mile west. They also have some east. They're all for the wind turbines, kind of like the gentleman that got up here that lives up in Kingsley that just smattered with that area up there. He has land in Woodbury County. Well, back to this individual who sent the email. Guess where he lives at? Okoboji. He has a beautiful home up there, and a very nice gentleman. I'm good friends with him. But he has farm ground down here in Woodbury County. He thinks it's a fantastic idea that we have wind turbines. Again, you can add that to that 80%. It's a landowner, again, that does not live here, but they think it's great. Touch on the MSDS sheets a little bit. Councilman Jeremy Taylor, him and I are old military guys. I think, Jeremy, you're still serving yet. But I'm very familiar with OSHA. I'm very familiar with MSDS sheets. I spent 39 years in the military. And I can tell the young lady that was up here, it's not just about chemicals. Councilman Nelson, he reaffirmed that. When you talk about material safety data sheets, you talk about OSHA. I said last week, have you ever watched a Mid-American truck back up and not have somebody back there spotting the truck? Have you ever seen them not chalk a set of duals? The answer is no. Not only no, but hell no. Last but not least, I also talked about Berkshire Hathaway. I said they're valued at $1 trillion. Mid-American is part of that portfolio. They deal in hundreds of billions of dollars every day. Our federal deficit's 1.7. So look at the collateral damage. Again, it's a military term we're very familiar with, right? The citizens of Woodbury County are collateral damage. Because if Mid-American had to pay, of their 4,500 employees that they probably have a whole floor of attorneys. There's probably 200 of them. They can afford to pay a $20, $30, or $40 million lawsuit. But get this, the county couldn't. I have somebody killed in my family. I'm suing Mid-American. I'm also suing Woodbury County because you guys have the empirical data. You have the MSDS sheets. You've received it. Every one of these meetings have been recorded. And I'll go back to what Dan said. They send interns up here. If this was really an important deal, they don't care. They make enough money where tens of millions of dollars in a lawsuit is pennies. And our families, our neighbors, us as citizens, we are the collateral damage. They do not care. This is big corporate money. This is what it's all about. And the farmer that complains about, well, you won't let me make any more money because they can't have a wind turbine. Well, I'll go ahead and coin the phrase last week from the gentleman that said, if you're struggling being a farmer and you think a wind turbine is going to help you get out of the red, good luck. You better find a different career. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak?
Steve Corey, 1757, 290th Street, Salix, Iowa. This is my third time up here as well, and I feel it's important that we bring this across the finish line and that you guys do stay with the decisions you've already made unanimously for the first two. A couple different things. First of all, this whole green energy thing, whether it's wind, solar, CO2 sequestration, none of these projects would be viable without burdening the taxpayer. It's all based on tax credits. Warren Buffett, CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, made it very clear he wouldn't put a wind turbine up if it wasn't for the tax credits that he gets from that. It's stated, it's quoted, so I'm not making that up. Let's talk about wind. The lack of transparency in the whole safety issue has been from day one, as Supervisor Taylor has been questioning now for 2 years, and we're still talking about it today. Mid-American has not been transparent in any way, shape, or form. Safety factors. There's the blade failures that have happened, okay? All it takes is one, okay? That's all it takes is one. Back to what Larry was talking about. you guys will be liable if we have a fatality because of that here in Woodbury County. They will come after you. Ice throws, fire, all right? Right now, we're powder dry in this county. If we had one of those and we had a fire in that, the whole darn county could go up if we had the wind going in the right direction. Lightning strikes, we have that happen here all spring, all summer long. Land recovery, we haven't talked a lot about that. What happens when these things are finally shut down and the tons and tons of concrete, rebar, fiberglass, carbon fiber, et cetera, prime ag land taken out of production, access to the roads and everything else that you go through these fields and whatnot. I've heard some farmers and the regrets they've had by putting these things on their farms. Not only that, but the young lady who was here earlier, there's some serious health issues with families and human beings and just pure living creatures anywhere close to these things. It affects them vibrationally. There's the hearing issues, so on and so forth. Not only that, but what about the health of the environment overall? We know that the biome in the soil, I've said this earlier, that surrounds these is dead. There's nothing living under these things. It's the vibration, the sound, and everything else. We talk about birds and so on and so forth. I did this, I put this together in 2 minutes sitting out here before we had the meeting today. I could go on, but I don't need to. I'm just trying to summarize some of the important facts here. You guys stick to your guns on this. We really appreciate you hearing us out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street, Mobile. So it's been 2 years since we asked for safety data sheets. Nothing. Does anybody here believe that if Mr. Nelson had not found safety data sheets that apply to this situation, that we would have anything at all from Mid-American today? I promise you we would still be sitting with nothing, and they would be talking about hypotheticals. We all know that these data sheets exist. We know that they have them. We know darn good and well they don't tell us what they want us to hear, and that's why they aren't giving them to us. The simple fact of the matter is, more than likely, the actual data sheets that they have are way worse than the ones we're looking at, and we probably don't have the setbacks set far enough back. I'd like to talk to these gentlemen from outside the area that own land here, and I would agree. We have property rights, and today, I live here and I own property here, and our rights are exactly the same. But here's the deal, the way the setbacks are currently set, I've got 80 acres that is completely surrounded by one neighbor, and he is signed with NextEra. Once those turbines go up, I can no longer do anything with that ground but farm it. So our rights no longer are the same. Now, that's called inverse eminent domain. And I'm going to promise you folks, it's also a trespass. I'm not waiting for somebody to get hurt to sue somebody. I promise you, you are not going to get an unfunded, illegitimate, eminent domain against my property without me fighting it. Because the simple fact of the matter, you're even denying me the legal process of eminent domain to protect my property. So, folks, with trespass, I don't need to wait for damages. I can sue right now, and I promise you I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak?
Kim Alexander, Smithland. I farm down in that area. Appreciate you men standing up for Woodbury County. Appreciate everything you said, the way you voted on this. I want to commend you. That's what men do. They fight for their communities. They fight for your county. So I appreciate that. I want to say up front, I'm absolutely in favor of alternative energy sources. I use several of them on my farm. I'm in favor of wind power. I have a windmill on my farm. I'm in favor of farm scale wind generation, but I am absolutely against these monstrosities, these infernal aerial turbines. And I just wanted to share, I have a dear friend, they farm down in north central Oklahoma, And I told her about what we're fighting up here, and she gave me her testimony of what they've experienced down there. She says, our personal experience with large-scale wind turbine farms has led us to believe there are cascading and compounding consequences that are not being widely discussed, perhaps because they are not well understood, or they're understood and being kept from the people who would live among them. There have been impacts to the sights and sounds of the environment, as well as the amount of congestion in the county, but I will primarily speak to the change in precipitation we observed. And just touching on that, the things that are not being discussed or understood reminds me of what this young lady said about the vibration. Yes, and what Steve seconded on that. There is more going on with these things than what can be measured by the human eye or even with some instruments. So I appreciate what she shared about those vibrations. So going on with my friend's testimony, we operate about 850 acres of a farming and ranching operation in northwest, north central Oklahoma. The wind farm put up in our county is approximately 15 miles long and 6 miles wide, with more than 100 large turbines. Since the wind farm went into operation in 2021, we have noticed changes to our storms. Specifically, with spring through fall storms, we see the storms lose intensity as they pass over and through the farm. If you consistently receive 50% of the rainfall a few miles outside of the wind farm, or the storms that break up altogether, it has a significant impact on our ability to farm and ranch without irrigation, which is not a sustainable option. From consistently observing the storms and weather the past 3 years, it is concerning how the wind turbines may have long-term impacts to the viability of farming, ranching in the areas, and in turn the livelihoods of the small rural communities supported by farms and ranches. I have a friend among another wind farm who is farming and ranching land that has been in his family for more than 100 years. It is heartbreaking to hear him describe how it has changed their centennial farm and how it impacts his ability to farm or ranch those same areas he's had for his entire life, even with improved farming practices. Again, thank you, gentlemen, and I hope that you vote unanimously again and send these Mid-America people the clear message that Woodbury County is not for sale, not now, and not ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak during the public hearing?
We do have a letter here that was in our mailboxes this morning, or when we got here, that I'd like to enter in the record from Galen and Joe Moore on this issue.
Okay.
Move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Public hearing is still open.
Hearing no other speakers, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Public hearing is now closed, and we're on to item 7B now, which is approval of the third and final reading of the ordinance amendments and discussion of the board on that. I'll go ahead and move that for discussion first.
Second.
Second by Taylor. I'm going to start off by saying, briefly as I did last week, I shared most of my thoughts in the first public hearing. They're the same. I believe that, what you do on your property is very important, but these devices do impact what others do on their property as well. And what we've learned over the last few months and years is that it's more than just about where a farmer lives, their principal place of residence. It's about the outbuildings. It's about their livestock. It's about their property. And of course, we're giving some more thought to our county road system and other things like that. So again, I'm supportive of the amendments, and I'll recognize the next supervisor. Mr. Taylor?
I would echo what the chairman said. My position on this issue hasn't changed. If anything, with the real world data and the incidents, public safety has to come first. And I think if you look, and we have talked to other supervisors and we have looked at other ordinances, some of them exceed what we're contemplating here today. And based on that, I'll be supportive. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson.
I'll echo what Jeremy Supervisor Taylor just said in regards to reaching out to other counties. I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in Iowa that are at or farther than where we're at here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in Nebraska, that some of these are quadruple, 5 times farther than where we're at here. So I don't think we're being egregious. I believe that we've got sound data. When you have an actual incident where they went out and measured this stuff, that's what matters. And so, for those reasons, I will be supportive of this measure.
Mr. Raddick.
So I guess, my view's kind of always been the same, but the data's changed. So previously we had, and what's interesting is Siemens, I was able to look up their manufacturer specifications, and it said 3.5 times tower height, and that's where I was last time we had these hearings. And now we have a new manual from Nordex saying 1 kilometer, and the data says 1 kilometer. So obviously I don't think we should go lower than what that data says while still respecting property owner rights. Thanks.
Okay. We ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 7C is to officially adopt the ordinance amendments. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Taylor. Any final discussion by the board? Questions for Mr. Priestley on implementation? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. And the ordinance 56 is amended. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who came, especially several weeks in a row. We appreciate your involvement. Move on now to item 9 from the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Nelson and Mr. Radig. This is for action. This is approval of the memorandum of understanding addressing retention and recruitment in the county attorney's office. I'll start by recognizing Mr. Nelson and then Mr. Radig.
Keith and I have worked with Ben Ingersoll. Sorry, my voice is, I didn't have much coming into this.
So
It's a big
I
night.
can take it if you want
Okay.
there,
Thanks,
but
Keith.
basically, this is continuation of last week's discussion. We have an agreement basically between us and the union as those that we're discussing in negotiations. This is an MOU to address understaffing and retention in this office. They're severely understaffed. The workload level's 200% in some cases. So this is just a continuation and action that I think needs to be done to encourage new hires. Anybody willing to go and get a law degree real quick and become a prosecutor, we'd entertain that, but hopefully we can get those positions filled within the time of the contract. Anything that, of course, fills those positions in that time, this MOU would then go away. And at any moment, they could basically take all or none on the MOU by the board's decision. So that's what's been added.
Could we get a motion on the item, please?
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Nelson. Mr. Taylor, would you like to speak?
I was just going to ask a question, if that's okay.
That's okay.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. So in the original MOU, and I'm referring to the one that was previously negotiated with Supervisors Ung and Bittinger, was that language in there in terms of being able to pull back from portions of the MOU? Or is that something that was, by the advice of legal counsel, added later on? Do we know?
I do believe it was in there.
Could you define which section you're referencing?
I'm referencing what Supervisor Radig discussed in terms of the MOU being able to be, I want to say rescinded or pulled back from by the county, if the county so chose at some portion of,
Are you talking about item 6?
I believe I am.
Yeah, that was in the original
Okay.
MOU as well.
All right,
Yes.
just a clarifying question. Thank you.
That is something that our labor attorney, Allison Dirksen, recommends be in any MOU.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Mr. Bittinger, would you like to comment?
No, I'm good.
Okay. What I want to say to this item is that actions speak louder than words. Since my 4 fellow supervisors removed me from the process on this MOU, what have been the actions taken? The actions taken have been to actually reduce the benefits offered to new employees under this arrangement and to introduce new items for existing employees. And what I'm hearing is that from those actions is that recruitment is not as big of a deal as I was led to believe if it's holding up this agreement for several weeks to include items of retention, which is an entirely different discussion when you consider the many number of valuable employees we have. We have over 450 county employees that draw county paychecks to consider. I've also talked to a lot of employees about this over the last week, and I am finding that they are concerned about the precedent that this sets in a lot of ways. Precedent is something that you'll remember I brought up in previous weeks to my fellow board members, and I feel like that warning was ignored. And so we are where we are now because I've essentially been prompted is the nice way to say it, forced is the not nice way to say it, of putting this on the agenda for action tonight. This is an item that contradicts itself, misquotes the master contract, for some reason has some pages blurred out to the point that they're unreadable. And it introduces a benefit that, in asking our Human Resources Director, no other local governments in the state of Iowa, county or city, to our knowledge, offer. Which is for this one union group, if the board is to approve this tonight, would receive 6-month raises. This is something where wage plan, the other 5 unions do not get. Other groups like Siouxland District Health, percentage deputies, EMA, county assessor, could not receive by code. And this is something that is unbudgeted, and it's hard to apply fairly because not every county department or office has the same amount of carryover funds from their staffing issues or lack thereof. What this means is that one union would get half of their raise between January and June of the preceding fiscal year that's not budgeted. And this is a precedent that last year, a couple of my board members specifically said they had an issue with, was using funds within the budget. In fact, Mr. Bittinger, you said something about what if this $2,000 bonus request becomes 5, 10, 15, or 20? Well, the proposal back to me that you and I both said no to was for 5. And I think that's kind of ironic. And I hope that the 2014 Bittinger has the same concerns that 2013 Bittinger did. With that, I do think that there is a fairness issue here and something that needs to be considered more thoroughly. And I've been told that there are county employees that would wish to address the board. And so I would invite them to do so.
Could I ask a quick question before we do that? Sorry, Kenny. You talked about benefits for new hires that were stricken from this. Could you point out what those?
I didn't say benefits were stricken, I said they were reduced, I believe. There's now a waiting period of 6 to 12 months for certain benefits.
That was at the request of the county attorney.
Okay. You've already had the opportunity to speak, Mr. Taylor. I'm going to recognize Kenny
I
Schmitz.
asked a question, are we not going to have board discussion and we're going to call up different county employees rather than have a discussion on the board?
Go ahead.
Okay, I appreciate it very much. I think it's important that the public knows that there was an anonymous letter that went out to 400 county employees the same morning that Supervisor Ung asked our board secretaries to, as soon as possible, make sure that the agenda goes out that morning. I think it's important to note that Supervisor Ung alludes to, I've talked to a lot of county employees, that he's polled other union members of bargaining units to ask them, would you like to have a raise every 6 months that's 1.5% as well? And so some of this, I believe, is generated by Supervisor Ung asking and polling members of other bargaining units at the same time. In other words, we're trying to address a staffing shortage that for quite some time, Supervisor Ung was the genesis and author of an MOU that did so. But when he sent out a very ill-timed and unprofessional press release that nobody on this board ultimately supported, I know you've included an email from Supervisor Bittinger, and then went through the diatribe and the insults and everything that's brought us to this point where the union asked for 2 other people. We've now addressed this. There's nearly $1 million every year in carryover funds from the county attorneys. So to talk like there is this unprecedented budget that's going to balloon or impede taxpayers, I think is disingenuous. It's just not there. I'm glad that both of you, we have an honest salesman and an honest farmer, worked on this. I'm glad you've come to an agreement on a lot of the points that were contentious. And I'm glad that we're able to work professionally with members of our county attorney's office. We have 7 out of what once was 16, nearly 10 years ago, and twice the caseload. That's what this was all about. And I'm also appreciative that some of the changes that are being complained about today were from our county attorney asking you, as you both sought input, and as you sought input from our assistant county attorneys and the labor representatives. So I think part of this is being driven by asking the question, by trying to set bargaining unit against bargaining unit when we do have an actual shortage. And then my last request would be, if we're inviting, and I'm not sure if this request was made before the MOU went out or after, which would be interesting to discover, but if we're inviting those county employees up, I'd like that they state very clearly that they want us to either reject it or that they want us to support it. But I don't think it's appropriate to talk about different bargaining units' wages, maybe another prohibited practice. Thanks.
I guess I'd also like to make a couple comments there too, that to ask a bargaining unit to pass an MOU that has only benefits for the new hires and nothing for retention for those that are signing on to it, I think you're just asking for the MOU to fail. I think that takes some common sense to realize that if you want to get the bargaining unit to sign on to something, you have to have some kind of carrot out there or incentive for them to be willing to sign on to give benefits to new hires that they wouldn't receive. So it's kind of like, I want to say just like basic common knowledge that you got to have some kind of incentive there for those that are in the bargaining unit to be willing to sign an MOU. So to be upset that there's an increase in benefits for existing employees, it's kind of just being naive to a process that we've worked hard to get to.
Mr. Nelson?
And I'd like to add that I was part of 2 negotiations this winter where both bargaining units ended up with around a 3% raise. And there were some other little things that we did, just things that were a gripe to them that we tried to clear up. But the attorneys union ended up with a short 9% raise, long 8%. And there was no complaints of fairness then. And we justified it that the reason we did that was because they were short, and they have less people in the office today than they did back in January when you and Dan were doing that negotiation. So I don't really understand this whole fairness argument, because if that's the case, then we should have given the attorneys union a 3% raise like everybody else back in January.
Well, I will say that the employees I've spoken to and department heads, elected officials have been thankful that I've told them the information, because some of them do feel like the board is trying to pull a fast one over on them. Between Friday and today, how else would they know if someone would tell them that there are retention things being discussed? And retention does apply to a lot of different areas. That's why when the board had ARPA funding, we tried to be as broad as we could with it, because we realized that there's a lot of essential services performed by county employees. You know, we have building services members that clean human feces off of cell walls. We have secondary roads employees that act as first responders and don't get all the glory. We have, of course, sheriff's deputies and jailers that put themselves in harm's way in order to preserve justice, and they want to make sure that there's staffing available to prosecute those people. So the aversion to transparency here from my fellow board members is very interesting, because being excluded from the process, I can still talk to county employees. I haven't been prohibited from doing that, and I don't regret it. And the board has had a chance to discuss, and I would like to allow them to come up and address the board if they would like. And I want to say this also. If you want to give a comment and you don't feel like, because you've seen other board meetings and you don't feel like being cross-examined or questioned, you can feel free to make a comment and sit back down. I want to make that clear. Kenny.
Kenny Schmitz, Building Services Director. It is time overdue that I represent and speak for the building services employees and address their numerous comments and complaints. I'm here today because up to this point, I've remained relatively silent after fielding many complaints on wages and benefits for other departments that have seen improvements, and why building services have been overlooked not once, not twice, but maybe 3 times. After reviewing previous board meetings, I informed my employees I would speak at the board meeting today. By not addressing the concerns in previous events, I feel that I've let them down and I'm to blame for it. I don't singularly place the responsibility on myself. I'd like to have responded to my employees' complaints by saying these issues are being handled by the board on a one department at a time issue, and they will get to building services. Or you're currently under union contract and there's no way to address this, but we know neither statement would have been accurate. On Tuesday, I received a phone call from Ben with AFSCME informing that he had received a call from a building services employee telling him that building services would be addressing the board on Tuesday. Ben wanted to find out what the issues were with them. I responded, employees have told me for years that they feel their concerns fall on deaf ears. Those deaf ears are mine, the board's and AFSCME's. Ben explained he has only been in place since May, and I understand that. I told him concerns are that wages don't compare to the job market, and there is resentment that other departments or employees have received adjustments. Ben explained the hiring situations with the attorneys and asked if building services was fully staffed. To that, I reply, I don't disagree that there is an issue with hiring employees. It is not possible for some departments to enlist the professionals desired due to a less than ideal wage offering. We are staffed with the availability of candidates we can obtain from applicants. Ben further commented, the attorneys have specialized people. To that I reply, when cooling and heating isn't operating, something needs immediate repair, or capital improvement projects are requested, building services is called upon. During COVID-19, building services employees were considered essential. When other employees or public fell ill with COVID, Building Services was contacted to enter and sanitize personal offices and both personal and public restrooms that were contaminated. Building Services employees regularly encounter human bodily fluids and receive hepatitis shots during employment. Building service maintenance and custodial employees are escorted into secure areas where they are then required to clean human feces off walls, ceilings, and light fixtures smeared on by mentally unstable inmates in a correctional facility. So please, explain to me why these people aren't special in their own way. Ben also asked me if I knew who my Building Services union employees were. To that, I reply, I know some. However, I don't have a list. I am concerned about all my employees, signed members or not. They are represented under the same contract. It's not my purview to know who are signed members in my department. It is my opinion, AFSCME shouldn't have asked the question. They should already have the information. What I do know is that at least one of my employees could not get AFSCME to acknowledge they were a dues member. Another has expressed unfairness that the union steward they are to rely on is employed with the county attorney office, who are now seeking an MOU, and it's a conflict of interest. I find it ironic that in the past 9 years, I have not received one request to provide input or to participate in contract negotiations involving the Building Services Department employees. I could have been a valuable resource that may have addressed the needs of all Building Services employees instead of a very select few. I'd like to be clear to AFSCME. I am not anti-union. In fact, even though I am in a management position, I am very pro-union. I would like to be part of a solution, not a problem. I'd like to be clear to the sheriff's office, secondary roads, and the attorney's offices. I am not speaking against other departments regarding the advancements or increases. I'd like to be clear to the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors. County employees are apprehensive to address the board and are fear of repercussions of doing so. Employees should be provided the same opportunities. Discussion on wages, benefits, advancements, offerings, contracts, MOUs, and one-on-one meetings should be extended to everyone, including Building Services equally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Tina Bertrand, Woodbury County Treasurer. Thank you, gentlemen, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. We already mentioned the letter that was actually transmitted last Friday. I actually forwarded it to you today because I wanted to bring up a couple of items. This letter appears to be anonymous, and I wanted to go on record that I did not draft it, I did not record it, I did not write it, I did not participate in preparing it. I do believe, however, that some of the actions that have been taking place, trying to resolve the staffing issues at the county attorney's office, highlights some concerns that Chairman Ong has actually voiced over the last couple of weeks. These are actually concerns that were brought up several years ago. When Sheriff Sheehan, back in 2022, brought up making a bold approach to wages within the county, it was a concern by this board that we were going outside of contracts, that it would be irresponsible from a fiduciary responsibility. I understand since COVID, we have had several issues that have come up and I think has changed what the employment environment is. I can tell you that in my office, staff is not here today because they don't believe that they're going to be heard by this board, and I'm not so sure even by their union. They were very offended when the last negotiation that took place with their contract, that the county attorney legal secretaries were given a 10% raise and they have to have the same qualifications that the staff in my office has to have. It's a GED, and that's it. We understand that their office is running 50% deficit in county attorneys. I don't believe the legal staff or the legal assistants were providing legal attorney-level services within that department, and if they were, that's a bigger concern. All staff, all county staff are valued, and they should be valued. The original MOU that was discussed back in August was for was for recruitment purposes. This has become a retention purpose issue now. And I understand that that's important, but retention is important in my office as well. I understand that what I am is the tax collector. I am probably one of the most hated county officials in the county. I tell people, you owe money, I don't care, pay the bill. If you're late, there are late fees. I collect the money, and my office staff collects the money that makes this county go round. It's what pays everybody's salaries. Everybody's. We deal with several people.
I'll move to
We-
suspend the rules for the 3-minute limit.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Bittinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. We had 400 people in our office on Monday. 126 people came through the drive-through. Okay, we are a very, very busy office. We are probably one of the busiest offices in the county. Maybe county health is has more customers coming in than our office. We have 252 people that we see every single day. We are responsible for a lot of documents. We have to read legal documents. We have to be concerned about federal and state guidelines in terms of giving out private information. The county attorney's office is important, and I get that. Every office is important. I would like my office to be recognized in the same fashion as everybody else. I would like to see the budget that I have in my office left over go back to bonuses to the hardworking staff that's at the treasurer's office. I can tell you that they feel that they are not deserving of anybody's attention. I have additional concerns with some of the policies and procedures that we have. I did, and I want to go on the record because I know that there was concerns, Mr. Taylor, that you had about Supervisor Ong reaching out to people. I reached out to him this morning. I also reached out to Supervisor Bittinger. I voiced my concerns that I should have stepped up last week when we were talking about policy and bylaws. And by action, 4 board members suspended board bylaws. I don't know if it's just that one where the chairman is the one responsible for negotiating contracts, or if it's all of them. Unfortunately, County Attorney Loomis is not sitting up at the board, up at the diocese tonight to be able to comment and answer that question. I don't know if Auditor Gill can or will answer that question. But if we're going to negate our policies and our bylaws and our contracts, then we might as well throw all of them in the garbage. I'm open to questions if you have them.
You have a question?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just to be clear, there is nothing in the bylaws that designates that the chairman be the person who negotiate with any union. So I just want to be clear. And our auditor, if I'm wrong, I've been wrong in the past, but if you could address, is there anything in the bylaws, because you wrote them or had a hand in crafting them? So I just want to make sure, because that had been brought up now, that we have a response.
I would like to ask the auditor that question now that you've raised it.
Okay.
As I can do.
Sure.
So I'm asking the parliamentarian on the, you mentioned when this action was taken, it was mentioned that it was in effect suspending the bylaws. Can you comment on what the proper course is for making changes to the bylaws?
According to Robert's Rules of Orders, the bylaws cannot be suspended.
How can they be amended?
By previous notice and at a subsequent board meeting.
And was the item that you were referencing the one that stated the chair is in control of day-to-day operations?
That's the way I would interpret it.
And having spoken to you after the meeting, did you not understand the question at hand during the meeting, or what was the issue there?
I did not have my manual with me to make that determination.
Okay. Unfortunately, the motion made with clarification provided by the auditor that it does suspend the bylaws was out of order, and I should not have allowed it to come to a vote. The proper way to amend the bylaws is to amend the bylaws in full transparency and with a week's notice. If we can amend the bylaws willy-nilly, one meeting to the next, there is no purpose in having bylaws. The bylaws themselves state that they take precedence over parliamentary authority and simple motions. To answer your question, Treasurer Bertrand.
But you just 5 minutes ago suspended the bylaws without a week's notice, so.
Right. I mean,
Excuse me. No, excuse me. Those are
rules.
no, excuse me. Those are rules for public participation in the agenda for speakers. Those are not in the bylaws. I would draw your attention to the actual bylaws where that is not addressed.
What do the bylaws say about removing the chair?
That's a question for the auditor.
It has to come from the chair. What is your question? I advise the chair, so.
I don't have that question.
Supervisor Raddick does.
Treasurer Bertrand, would you like to continue?
My concern is that if we're going to operate that way as a county, and we're going to continue to overwrite our contracts, okay, and this MOU process is the attorney's contract was recently signed. I do believe, if I understand correctly, that we were talking that the attorney, I believe, Mr. Nelson, you just stated it, that the attorneys received an 8 to a 9% increase for the new contract, and this MOU grants another 10% increase in their wages. Is that correct? And if the MOU is to be voluntarily canceled once staffing reaches full staffing, does that mean that all attorneys go back to the wages that are in the contract? So is the MOU, wages in the MOU, are they only applicable until full staffing is reached? Because what that means is that the county attorneys are going to receive a 10% increase until staffing levels are at 17 again. And the expectation is the MOU would then cease, and then wages would go back down? Is that the expectation? Or is the expectation that it's a voluntary issue to cease the MOU and cancel the MOU that this board has no intentions of doing? Because it's action that has to take, it is action that has to be done by the board. I understand that that was a clause that the county attorney asked to have in there. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
No, the labor attorney.
The labor attorney put it in there?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's been in from what I understand, it's been in all MOUs that the county's ever conducted.
Okay, so as a concerned county employee, as an elected official, and a concerned citizen of Woodbury County, when staffing levels reach 17, can we come back and request that this board then voluntarily strike the MOU? And would we be heard?
That'd be correct. You could come in front of this board and request that. That would be correct. Or the board could voluntarily do it on their own. with an agenda item.
Okay, and so everybody understands that their wages would then just go back down to what their current contract is that correct?
I believe so because we've had negotiations with the attorneys union and we talked about this item in depth. So my understanding would be if they feel good with this and Ben can come up here, he's shaking his head yes, so yes, they are aware.
Okay, and is it a requirement to be at a 50% deficit in staffing to focus on retention of staff members? Because I want to put out there that since I started as county attorney in 2021, history is there. I've gone back and looked, and since 2017, the county treasurer's office ceases to have employees over 7 years. Once they meet 7 years, they leave because there's no opportunity, there's no advancement, and there's no increases after the 5th year other than the 2.5% that everyone gets. And 7 and 8 year employees are not happy about being paid what 5-year employees are being paid. They believe they should be recognized. The other question I have, and unfortunately the county attorney's not here right now, maybe he's in the back and I haven't seen him. I know that he's had an issue with hiring, and I understand that. I don't know how many resumes he's received. And I don't know how many people he's hired and they haven't stayed on. That is an issue that I will say that in my department I have faced over the last 3 years. I had an issue where I had new hires come on board and they would leave after 3 or 4 months, maybe 6. And the complaint that I got was that it was an issue within my own staff, that the new hires were feeling unwelcomed because they didn't like some of the changes that were happening. I would ask the county attorney if he's having the same problem in his own office with new hires. Or is it an issue, because it is a professional level, is it an issue with licensing and being able to pass the board?
From my understanding and talking with James, most of the time there are no applicants.
There are no applicants.
Correct.
Okay. I get plenty of applicants, maybe not some that actually are qualified to actually do the job, but we spend a tremendous amount of time training them. Because you don't come in knowing and understanding the Department of Transportation very lengthy code. You have to learn about all those documents. You have to learn about what a secured POA is. You have to learn about what secured paper is. And we spend an immense amount of time training on some of those issues. But I would rather do that sometimes than leave the position open. There is a side of me that I do believe that sometimes I should leave the position open so I can drop to a 50% staffing level to get the attention of the board to address retention issues within the department. I don't know if hiring and filling those positions is to the advantage of the workers. It is certainly to the advantage of our community. I have great concerns that when we have disengaged employees, that it has a direct impact on the services that we provide. And a couple of statistics I do want to share, and I shared these with Supervisor Bittinger earlier today. Nationally, over the last 5 years, there has been an 80% turnover. So what the county attorney's office is experiencing is something that I think we are all experiencing. There is a 53% disengagement factor within staffing and a 17% actively disengaged employees. Okay? That's a pretty significant issue with employee morale and retention. And this issue right now, when it turned to retention with the extra benefits, it's not just the additional 10% wages, it's the buyback of their vacation. I have staff members in my office that they sometimes bump up against their anniversary and they're scrambling to take their vacation. That has a direct impact. Staffing levels in the treasurer's office are important because when we go below 3 people in our office, it has a direct impact on the services that we provide to our community. We increase our wait times and we increase our turnaround times. What's unfortunate for us is that collecting taxes and giving people license plates, it's not as sexy and as glamorous as talking about murder trials and the crime within our community. It's humdrum. But it is necessary. It is essential. Nobody in our community can drive their vehicles without their license plates. We collect the lion's share of the revenue of this county. So we're important as well. And I know the staff in my department wants to be heard. But like I said, they're not here today because they don't believe they are heard. I share what Kenny just said about having it to be on me to make sure that their voices are heard. I can only apologize that I wasn't strong enough to actually reach out to both Supervisor Ung and Bittinger during the negotiations to put forth my concerns and some of the things I would like in the Treasurer's Department to address it. Their union is a very complex one because it has several different departments. And what's good for my department may not be good for another department. And dealing with that flexibility and dealing with that diversity is a challenge. But they do feel like they're overlooked all the time. There have been several MOUs that have been issued on several contracts, and I'm starting to understand, I'm confused and want to understand why. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
My name is Todd Copeland, president of AFSCME Council 61. We represent a majority of the employees probably in this room and in this county. We also represent 40,000 plus employees in the state of Iowa, another 30,000 employees in the state of Missouri and Kansas. I want to make a few things clear, if I could, to the elected officials and supervisors in this room of other departments. In July, Matthew Ung reached out to the union representative about a conversation he had with the county attorney to do something about the staffing issues in the county attorney's office. First and foremost, as a union, we don't go looking for problems. We're here to resolve issues. That's what our job is. There was an issue in the county attorney's office, and it was presented to us, and we worked to resolve that. In the process of doing that, information was left out, and the employees wanted to have some things put back in. In the process of that, there was a 2 a.m. press release that went out that basically blasted us. And I've got the feeling so far today that I'm getting the feeling that AFSCME is the problem here. And it's not the problem. It's the man that sits in the middle here. We have worked diligently the last 4 days, to get this resolved. And I believe it's been resolved with the effort of the supervisors up here. We don't know what we don't know. That doesn't make any sense probably to anybody in this room. But what I'm trying to explain to you is if nobody brings anything to our attention, which they did in July, that there was an issue in the county attorney's office. But if there is an issue in the treasurer's office or in the general services department, we don't know what we don't know. If you don't tell them, they don't come to us. And go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes.
Is this not able to be a dialogue?
I thought that the rules were to address the chair, and the supervisors up here were not to ask questions. So I would just ask if you're going to chair the meeting consistently, that you would rule on that. Thanks.
Rule on what exactly? That
If
Treasurer
we're going to have
Bertrand Kenner
dialogue
cannot ask
from
me
the,
a question?
No, that we're going to have dialogue from the audience to somebody who's speaking during that person's time.
I don't intend to have dialogue within the audience, no.
That is a point of order.
If you want to talk to me afterwards, I'd be more than glad to take any questions.
Just
Going on.
We're on this item, and I think
Going on. We don't know what we don't know. So if you don't bring it to our attention, we don't know. We don't headhunt. We don't go around asking, how's your working conditions?
Chair.
Do they stink really bad? Or
Excuse me, sir, Mr. Auditor.
The speaker should be addressing the board.
Thank you. Please.
We don't headhunt. We don't go around asking about how bad is your working conditions that we should do or present an MOU to the board to try and make it better for you. We don't know. With 40,000 employees, that's not that easy to do. And there's 4 staff members in this state, split up between 4 quadrants of this state. The representative that represents this part of the state is a third of the state of Iowa, from north to south, from the Missouri River almost to Des Moines. So there's a large amount of acreage that Ben has to represent. But we will always address, especially if the board comes to us or any department head, elected official, we have an issue with staffing, with retention. Can we sit down and work something out? That's what we do. We're here to help. We are not the bad guy here. And I feel that we are portrayed as the problem, as a part of the solution. That's what we were here to do. Mr. Ung made mention earlier that he had no information whatsoever of any department, county, city, organization ever having any kind of a letter of understanding to this proportions. Trust me, there's lots. I could bring them all to your attention as privileged information that does not pertain to you. If you want to get a FOIA request, I'd be more than glad to facilitate that. But this is not something that is egregious. It's something that's definitely needed. Obviously, you're down 50% of the employees as far as prosecuting attorneys in this department. You have a problem there. If there's problems in the treasurer's office, in general services, public works, recorder, auditor, any department that you have, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We are here to represent the employees of this county, but we're here to help you guys too. We are part of the solution. We're not part of the problem here. I wish you would get some of your information correct. I believe you're only giving part of the information. This is the 4th meeting I've been at, 2 which I've been present and 2 and I've watched. The 2 that I have watched, you spew nothing but misinformation. And it's all I can do to not throw my phone from watching it. Just get your information straight. That's all. We're here to give you straight information. We're here to be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. When you give information that's not correct, Matt, you're part of the problem. You have to understand that. We're here to help. We're not here to ruin things. That's all I have to say.
Corey? And I have not given any wrong information.
Hi guys, Corey Davis, President, CWA Local 703. This turned into a little more than I thought it was going to be. So I trying to think of where to start. And first of all, I just want to say that I do appreciate this board's ability to adapt to situations. We're one of those unions that took advantage of some, we brought concerns, and because of the board's adaptability and willingness to work and recognize employees as people, not numbers on a spreadsheet, in a time when we were having troubles with retention, with hiring, things like that. It meant it was trying to think of the words to use here, but I'm so proud to when I'm able to speak to that at other union meetings, to share that experience, in an entirely Republican board, to negotiate, to offer a raise outside of, a contract when we're already in the middle of a 4-year contract. That's unheard of. It's amazing, but I give that credit to you, our elected officials in being open to that, because there was a problem, and I think you did the right thing. You know, I don't work for the county. I have no skin in this game, except for the fact that I stand up for my members, and, you know, they bring concerns to us, and in the past, we've been able to work through those things and fix it. And so I commend you for that. And I didn't want to come here and interject ourselves into another union's bargaining or complain that we work harder than other people or that we're more important. I really don't like that trajectory. Everybody is important. You know, everybody does. We're all cogs in this wheel, and that's whether you work for the county, whether you work for a phone company, whether you work for a restaurant, you know, nurses, you know, everybody, our teachers, our paraeducators, the list goes on. We're all doing our piece in our communities to keep this moving forward. But we do. Okay, I just totally lost my train of thought there. I totally got off. But when I was sitting here, one of my favorite union sayings is that we're the front line, not the bottom line. And the reason that's one of my favorite sayings is because it means so many things. Like, you know, it's so simple. But the first part, we're the front line. That's what I was just alluding to, basically with that, is that, you know, we all play an important role. You know, at times, if I'm in a hospital, that nurse and that doctor, they're the most important people in the world to me. You know, when my son has is at school, that's that teacher, that paraeducator, that's the most important person to me in the world when he's in school. You know, their coach, you know, when if there's an emergency and the police, you know, I need the police or sheriff's department to come help me out, that's the most important person to me in the world at that point. So, you know, so we are the front line with that. But the bottom line, it's not just about the finances. A lot of people think, you know, like we don't want to be the bottom line on a spreadsheet financially. And that's what a lot of people think, you know, unions, we're just trying to get money. We're just trying to, we're trying to do better than the other union, you know, to get, you know, our bigger piece of the pie. It's also about respect. You know, I hate to say it, you know, Matthew, I know that there were some things, a lot of people started coming to me because I've said a lot of great things about Matthew. I spoke highly of him. And people are, believe it or not, shocked. They're like Matthew Hung? Like, really? And I was like, yeah. You know, Jeremy Taylor. I caught a lot of grief for saying nice things about you, believe it or not, at times. And, you know, but really? Like, those guys, like, yeah, if we get to know them and we, you know, work with them, like, they're doing that. You guys are doing this because you want to make your community better. I would hope, you know, that's why you guys ran. As I get to know you guys personally, you know, you guys do show that. Like, you are in these positions because you want to do your part. You know, you don't have the budgets to give everybody everything they want every time. I understand that, but you know, we've made a lot of good progress in our units, but on the respect thing, you know, that's Mr. Hung. That's why addressing the chair here as I'm supposed to. I'm not here to point my finger or waggle. I'm just going to say, you know, I have to condemn what was said, and on the flip side of that coin, thank Jeremy Taylor for his immediate, quick response to that. I wasn't here in that meeting, but with see, there's been a lot of learning opportunities here, both procedurally and but that's how wisdom is built, and hopefully everybody comes out stronger with this. And I do stand. I hope that the attorneys get the contract and everything that they deserve, not just the money, but also the respect going forward. I hope no union has to go through what they went through in these negotiations. And so hopefully everybody's learned a lesson and moving forward along the way. What I did want to say is a lot of people have reached out to me saying, you know, and what's funny is that people have started calling you your friend, Mr. Hung, or your friend, Matthew, when they prefer to you. So I just want to make the record straight, Mr. Chair, that although we do have a cordial relationship, we are not actually friends, although you have at times suspiciously followed me around airports around the country. That's a joke, kind of.
We run into each other at airport lounges from time to time.
From time to time. But we, going through my notes here. Yeah, we can't change the past, but we can move forward. Sorry, guys, here. Yeah, yeah, I was just, when I was thinking about that, I was thinking, like, as I trying to explain this, I just keep telling people stories of how, you know, you've come to our meetings, and the first time you came to a meeting, everybody talked about how, you know, we could tell you were a little nervous. You were out here, you know, it's not where you're used to hanging out at a union meeting. And then at a certain point, your shoulders dropped, you know, you started to smile, you started to laugh with us, and you became, you know, and that's when we felt like we were being heard after that. And you made, you know, you've done some great things for us, like down to just chairs. We fought for, you know, years to try and get the budget for chairs. Doesn't seem like much, but if that's your only thing saving your back from a bumpy road when you're driving a truck full of dirt or rock or gravel or whatever you're driving, it's a huge deal. Like the men that received those seats were extremely thankful. I mean, it was, you know, they're in those for 40 plus hours a week. So, you know, little things like that. And as far as the, you know, I was one of the people that was reached out to and surveyed or you know, whatever we're calling it here. And I'm not saying that we deserve it because, oh, these guys did better than us in bargaining. I'm not saying because we were more important or we work harder, but I do think that it would be an effective, I do think it would be a benefit to the people, not because they want or need the couple extra cents that they would get from it, but I think that would be another incentive to help further the positive conversations that we had while we were in bargaining to retain people, keep the people that are there, not just keep them working there, but keep them happy, you know, job satisfaction. You know, happy cows make happy milk. I said that at a workplace one time. I got in a lot of trouble, but it's, you know, to put it simply, like I don't see any harm. There's a little bit extra in the budget, you know, whether we do that, you know, there's ideas floating around as, you know, bonuses or this or that. I think that would be a positive thing for us. And when I asked a few of our members that were in bargaining, you know, what their ideas would be, the first thing that everybody said was they would not do it if it was stepping on the toes of the attorneys, because as a union, we would never do anything to step on another union. We stand together with them. So if the attorneys have, you know, we stand with them. We hope that they get the deal that they deserve and the respect that they deserve. But as far as that, we think that it would be a positive thing for the roads workers, for the roads department as well. So we'd be in favor of it.
And that's why I've always referred to you as my favorite, nicest union. Mr. Taylor, you have a question?
So when you
for him.
say, I just want to make sure for the public's sake and for ours, when you say surveyed, you're referring to Supervisor Ong calling and asking, would your members like this too? That's in the MOU tonight, is that what?
That is.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that the different people that are coming forward, I'm glad that you're letting us know that Supervisor Ong was reaching out and saying, what about your group, and if your group's not getting this, and would they like, we've had several employees who have talked to us and said, Supervisor Ong called us and was talking about the contents of the county attorney's MOU and saying, would you like this too? And so that makes it very clear, and it's very helpful to get a bigger picture of a little bit of what's going on here as well. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, and always appreciate your candor.
Thank you, yeah.
I would like to call a point of order
Sorry,
here
go ahead.
that the things being discussed be relative to the MOU for the county attorneys union, whether or not that is for or against the county attorneys union.
I believe this is relevant. And I would also say that the MOU is not a state secret here. I'm looking out for our other 5 unions and our wage plan and our percentage deputies, including Michelle Scaff, who helped me do a report on what this would cost if the supervisors were so inclined to be approaching this from an equity standpoint, which is a quote from Mr. Taylor last year and a concern he had about previous bonuses. And that's, you know, if we want to come up with $250,000 approximately every year than the preceding fiscal year, then let's be consistent. And let's bless all of our wage plan, our hardworking wage plan department heads. Unfortunately, we can't extend that benefit to percentage deputies, like our next speaker.
I move to appeal the chair's decision.
Second.
So we need to have a vote as to whether or not we can have everybody come up and talk about every other union when this is the item about the attorney's office union, MOU.
We don't know what the next speaker is going to say, Mr. Radig. That is out of order.
I would ask the auditor.
I have a motion
I
to
think he-
appeal the decision.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. So
What is a decision is made to continue to allow public comment on this item. Is the motion to cease public comment on this item?
The motion is to cease public comment that is not related to the attorney's MOU.
Correct.
As the presiding officer of this meeting, this is relevant discussion because retention does apply to every county office.
Can we get a ruling from the auditor, since we don't have
Well,
a county attorney?
The attorney, or the
You have a
auditor
motion and a
need
second.
to, it's up to the board to decide, and by a majority, we can decide.
And I
that
just
the
direct the
chair is
chair to
incorrect.
look at the auditor who's nodding. Thank you.
Yes, a motion has been made to appeal, and that's up to a vote of the board.
I'd ask for a record vote.
Yes, there was a motion, I believe, made, and the chair should recognize it, is that to appeal the decision of the board, or the chairperson, and the board needs to vote on that motion.
What exactly is the motion?
The motion is to appeal your decision that every public comment needs to be heard for every other union. This is about the MOU with the attorneys union only. So if we have a vote to appeal your decision, then the comments that need to come up are only pertaining to the MOU for the attorneys union.
Can you restate the motion,
The
Mr.
motion
Auditor?
was to appeal your decision.
To appeal my decision to allow county employees to address the board with concerns about this item, which is approving an MOU.
That is not actually what you stated. You stated that discussing what their concerns are with their own union is that it's
I am
pertaining
not
to-
telling them to discuss their own union, Mr. Radig. I am inviting them to offer public comment.
That's not
On
on
the
this item.
question.
That's not on this question,
It's
and it's
not
not on
pertaining
this
to this
item.
item.
That's the whole point. You just said you want to have a discussion about equity of every other bargaining group, rather than the subject matter that's on hand that was published on a publicly notified agenda.
No, I said that's the concern you had.
Correct, and you're
In
not
April of
addressing-
last year.
We're not going back to
we
April last
discussed-
year.
No,
There's a motion
we
and a second and a
discussed-
call for a record vote.
We discussed
And if you-
items from the county treasurer, which was discussing an item for the county attorney's MOU, and you were perfectly okay with allowing discussion from that.
And nobody moved to appeal it.
Correct.
Here,
There's
we're
a
moving
motion
to
and a
appeal it.
second and a call for a record vote, which has to now occur. Correct, Mr. Auditor? Thank you.
In my opinion, the discussion from county employees should be candid, as they have not been given the opportunity or the advance notice to discuss this until it was brought to their attention over the weekend. So I would urge my fellow supervisors to vote against this motion.
And again, the speaker should say whether they are for or against the MOU, because that is the item that is up for discussion and on the table right now.
And I know I'm new here. I guess what advance notice do we normally give any department heads or elected officials about agenda items that don't relate to that? Aren't everybody notified when the agenda comes out on Friday?
Honestly, at this point, I don't think this, I don't have the manual with it, but it is not debatable. You have a motion and a second, and as long as everybody is clear on what the motion is, and there's disagreement here, and ultimately it will be up to the chair, but is whether you adhere to the rules, that the speakers will limit their remarks to 3 minutes, and the time, what I understand, is the time limit has been suspended for this discussion on this agenda item. So
May I just interject one thing
3
as an
minutes on
outside
any one
person?
item to address
Not
or
a member of
remarks
the
to the
board.
board.
Excuse me.
This
is
is
a
a
non-discussable items with the chair. Mr. Auditor, you may continue. I'll get to you if the board allows me to.
Okay. I believe where we're at in this point of the meeting is that the time limit for speakers to address the board was suspended. Just the time limit. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. So they will limit their remarks, take off the 3 minutes, to any one item and address the remarks to the board. That's
Yes.
what you're deciding. So we can vote on this motion, but then it's going to be up to the chairperson to decide if you're adhering to what that motion was.
That's the problem. It's not really the problem, because after. an
That's your
appeal is-
problem.
After
That's
an
all- I
appeal
think
is
a majority of our
successful, we
board's
can move
problem.
to suspend to elect a temporary chair. So we can have a vote, and if this vote passes, then we can elect a temporary chair to move this meeting along.
Which I would be in favor of too, so that there's some sort of order of semblance and.
I guess where I'm at is I'm kind of lost in the weeds here. So item 5, as far as the rules, says that the chair may request statements in favor of an action to be heard first, followed by statements in opposition to the action. What we've been hearing has been neither supportive or against, and rather something not related to this item at all. So I can understand Keith and Jeremy's frustration. I'm fine hearing these comments, but you're not following your own rules, Mr. Chair.
I agree. So where are we at
They
right now?
say the chair may request statements in favor or against,
Yeah, item 5.
okay? So I may do that.
Of an action to be heard, not of any other thing that's not on this agenda.
Yeah, for instance, that this item would not be appropriate for them to come up and talk about windmills, because
Correct.
we're not on that item. And so,
Well, they're not talking about windmills, Mr. Nelson. They're talking about their valuable county employees that they have as well.
That's under citizen concerns. That's not under this item.
No, it
majority-
is not.
and that's
A
fine.
majority of
It
your
is not
board
about the
disagrees
attorney's
with you.
MOU.
And again, Pat is nodding. The majority of this board, this is kind of the crisis of this board right now, is that the majority of this board still rules, not you. So when a motion is passed, and there's a second, and there's a request for a record vote, it happens. And if Supervisor Raddick says the only way to conduct a meeting is to elect a new chairperson, and if that happens by majority, then that rules, not you. Period. I mean, you may not like the shakes, but that's it.
Mark, are you
So,
coming back, or are you? So I'm assuming there's not going to be a vote until he comes back. Will you guys mind if I just say something before you vote?
I think at this point.
I don't know if it's not that we don't want to hear you, I don't know if
And
it's
who are you?
proper.
We're going to recess until Supervisor Nelson gets back from the bathroom, assuming that's why he really left.
Right. This process. I'm in favor of that, otherwise we can get- I mean, one thing that's good on the record is for any,
Thanks for the question, Chad, but I wasn't throwing my hands up in defeat, so appreciate it. recesses. I see looking up. What? Who's gonna do it, Keith? Yeah. I thought your question was legitimate. If you
Okay, all right. You don't know what somebody's going to say when they walk up here. I would just caution you, as a leader of a large part of the county, if you make a decision that you're going to silence the voices of people that are here that want to talk to you, you're making the point that
The voices
that
won't be
Bertrand was trying to
silenced.
make
They're-
earlier.
They're perfectly able to come up at citizen concerns. That's
No,
not silencing a
they can
voice.
talk about the MOU. Who's going to decide whether it's about
We're
the
not
MOU
even
or
in a
not?
meeting right
It's not
now.
you.
We're not even in the meeting right now. I mean,
Let's
Okay,
be honest. It's gotten personal.
Everyone,
Everything's gotten personal.
we're going to return to session. To be clear, my ruling is to allow comment, in this case, from the sheriff. Is there a clearly stated motion that appeals that ruling?
So that's not what my appeal was. My appeal was that, and my point of order was in place because you are having comments on everything other than the MOU at this point. The point of order is so that the comments are for or against the MOU that is on the agenda, item number 9, that we are supposed to be discussing, and we are not. So that is the point of order. And you said that it can be about anything, to which I appealed your decision and have a second to. I would like a vote on it, and I would like to move on, because after that, we can elect a temporary chair, get the meeting done.
My ruling is to allow public comment from our county employees.
can't happen. The auditor knows that the auditor knows when a record roll call vote is requested, that it has to be executed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Auditor.
That's what we're trying to determine here, is that you've got a motion, and it needs to be clearly stated what the motion is, what you're appealing from the floor, from the chair. So what is the appeal?
The appeal is because the chair is allowing discussion not related to item 9 on the agenda.
So you're talking about rule number 4,
Correct.
right? So the chairperson is talking about the MOU, and from what I've been heard the discussion, it has all been about the MOU. They continue to talk about the MOU, and the effect that it's had on other employees of the county.
My position is that the comments from everyone, including those I disagree with, has been germane to this discussion. Their opinions of their own office influence what they think about the attorney's MOU that is on the agenda tonight. And my ruling, if there has been a ruling made by me, is that the sheriff should be allowed to speak.
So we're going to ignore the motion in the second for the call for the record roll call vote. Is that the
You
case,
can't-
Mr. Auditor? We can't make a
You
motion in a
can't
second? and have a vote?
describe what my ruling is, and you can't put words in my mouth, and you can't tell me what I'm doing, Mr. Taylor. What I'm doing is allowing public comment from our county employees.
Related to the MOU that's on item 9.
Yes. And to your chagrin, the county auditor just said he believes the comments made thus far have been in order
I'm
and
going to move
germane.
back to our 3-minute rule.
Second.
There's already supposedly a motion on the table. You can't just keep on throwing out motions.
So are we going to dismiss the motion, or are we going to
The
vote on it?
motion has
or
not
have a
been
semblance
stated
of a
and called
meeting?
to a vote because it is not clear. My determination is that county employees should be allowed to speak and address the board. That not only 7 or 8 employees are who we serve, but we serve over 450 county employees. And with that, I would invite the sheriff to speak.
Thank you. First, what I was going to come up and just suggest is to not silence the voices of the people here as they're going to discuss how their opinions may relate to this MOU. Because as a fellow elected official and a fellow Republican, silencing voices is not part of what we stand for when it comes to full transparency. And if we were to silence voices,
you would be making Treasurer Bertrand's case that she tried to make earlier, that her employees aren't here because they won't feel heard. And all I wanted to do was caution you before you made that vote to not paint yourself into that corner. That's the point I was going to make. But since I'm here and I'm going to be limited to 3 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and say what I have to say. If I'm forced to tell you whether or not I want the MOU to pass, absolutely, I want the MOU to pass. Because of all the people in this room, I've walked the walk that I'm for union employees above anybody in this room. And I'll stand my record up against that. When in 2022, since Tina Bertrand brought it up, when I said, I think Mr. Taylor and I were debating, I said, if you want to be bold, then open up all the contracts. And I was chastised for it. It was irresponsible. It was crazy. I had somebody in my office the next day. Apparently, it's not a crazy idea. So here we are. So yes, I am in favor of it. But I can be in favor of it and have concerns about the slippery slope that has occurred here in the process, okay? Two things can be true at the same time. And for the record, before anybody reached out to me, I was sending Supervisor Nelson text messages during last week's meeting saying, Mark, please be cautious about the slippery slope that you're going to step on, okay? Be careful. You don't want to create an MOU that limits an elected official's ability to run an office, okay? A couple things that were brought up during this meeting. Recruitment addressed without addressing retention will fail. That's not true, Keith, because the deputies union passed in their last negotiation advantages to recruitment for our office at no benefit to the employees who were already employed.
They had pay raises in there, correct?
They weren't additional pay raises because they had let it pass. So my point is, see, they allowed that to happen because they knew it benefited them on the back end because they got a more experienced person who started the job that they're now going to be working next to going out on calls. So it does happen. Leftover funds to go back to your employees as bonuses, as Treasurer Bertrand said. I tried to do that. I believe that might have been in 2022 as well, under supplemental pay, which is allowed according to Iowa code. And you had a ruling or a message from the county attorney then, P.J. Jennings, that the board refused to listen to and went your own way. And that, we just let that go. So what I would say as a negotiator, I've been a trained negotiator, as a hostage negotiator, crisis negotiator, whatever you want to say. I always try to encourage people, when you're in a negotiation, look at it from the other person's perspective. Chairman Ung, much respect, but there were a few things that I think maybe if you could change, you would have. Just words, because words do matter. But from, I'm supposed to address you, I'm sorry. Okay. I would also encourage our fellow employees that if you put yourself in Chairman Ung's shoes, he felt like there was perhaps a bait and switch pulled on him. Whether that's true or not, those are his feelings, and to acknowledge that would be helpful. Because I think the one thing that we all in this room can agree on, I hope, is that we want to do what's best for the citizens of Woodbury County and the taxpayers. That we should all be able to at least agree on that. We may not agree on how we're going to get there, but if we can agree on the same finish line, there's going to be some, the devil will be in the details. I understand that. But try to keep that end goal in mind at all times when we're negotiating. I've told our union employees, I think that what's taken place gives them some bargaining power when it comes time to negotiations for their wages. Both of our units are up for wage negotiation this year. So the correctional officers and the deputies. And our correctional officers are understaffed. And what has been failed to recognize, I think, perhaps in the big picture, is that our correctional staff may have the hardest job of anybody in the world as far as I'm concerned. And they're also the only staff that I'm aware of in the county that, once we get into this new building, may have $5 million of revenue for the work that they do. So when they come, be prepared, because they're going to come and they're asking, and they're going to want the same MOU, that their whatever their raise is going to be half in January. And again, for the record, my stance is I hope you pass it for them. They need it. I'm talking to county attorneys now. Our county attorney, James Loomis, needs the help. They need it. So, but some of the procedural stuff, I think you got to hold your nose as this has gone on. That would just be my caution. So I wasn't planning on saying that much, but I'll answer any questions you have.
You want to ask any questions of the sheriff? Thank you. Melissa, I need to call you up. You discussed some questions you had on implementing this. Previously, I don't believe you've had, aside from a couple questions from Mr. Nelson, I don't think you've been sought out for your advice on this MOU, which I think is a little disrespectful to you because you're the one responsible for interpreting it. And it certainly hasn't gone through any legal review on the county side. So can you describe?
Is that another omission of the truth? Because I did call Melissa as well.
No, I let him know that you called me.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know.
No, that's not the
I'm just
mission.
saying, you said Mr. Nelson, so.
Well, you as well. Several terms were not, you did not.
I did not reach out to any attorney regarding this MOU.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, so Melissa Thomas, Human Resources Director. Now, who is responsible for the interpretation and administration of this MOU? I just want to put that out in the open meeting here. So who's the one that drives the raises and everything else?
When you're asking the question, the administration, are you talking about from a wage perspective? Who's going to implement?
Who's going to tell payroll, the auditor, to give somebody the bonus or give them, put them on this step? That's what I'm talking about. I mean, because somebody's going to have to be the person behind all this, driving the increases and the bonuses and.
Who would normally do that?
I have been the one that interprets the contract.
What's
Yeah.
that? Sorry.
I have been the one that interprets the contract, so I just wanted to make sure.
I don't know why we would depart from that practice in terms of both your administration and working with the deputy auditor.
Okay, so then my next question would be in part of the MOU, if this passes, it says that the bonus will be paid on the next pay period. Will that be this Friday, is that expected, or can we do it the next pay period since this pay period ended on Sunday? Okay. Yeah. So that's a question.
Sure.
Just so we know how to do it correctly.
Do either the supervisors who put this item on want to answer that?
Whatever works best for you guys as, employees, so.
Okay.
I would say as soon as possible. So Melissa, you're willing to say on the record that you and I never talked about this new MOU?
Oh, no, I didn't say that. I said we did talk
Matthew
about it.
No, that's not what I said.
Yeah, no.
No, I said aside from Mr. Nelson asking you a few questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of the terms in this MOU were not advised on by Melissa. Go ahead.
Okay, so you said as soon as possible on the bonus. Okay, so we'll try to get that done this Friday. That'd be up to the auditors. If we can do that, and I think she has to also ask questions if that's okay. Another question would be, there was an attorney that started on 9/18 of this year, of 2024. Is that considered a new attorney or an existing attorney?
New attorney.
New, okay. Okay, so that would be, that makes a difference as far as when that person will get their bonus, okay.
Yep.
And then, as far as, and I think I did ask you this, as far as putting the current employees on the new steps, would that be effective 9/25 then? I did ask you that question
Yeah.
when we talked, yeah.
Yep.
So that's effective as a 9/25 on the new steps, okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I had, and I don't know if Michelle would like to.
Melissa?
Mm-hmm.
The MOU says the new hire bonuses of $3,000 follow the terms as stated in the 2024 to 2027 union contract. It's my understanding the 2024 to 2027 master contract says the new hire bonus is $1,500 and only for step one, and the new hires, or at this time, the new hire came in at step two.
I'm not sure where the new hire came in, but that is what the contract says.
Yeah, the
That
new hire
people
did come in at,
step one.
it did come in at step two according to the
Okay.
salary schedule.
Okay.
And so, how would you implement this? If the MOU says that the master contract says something it doesn't say?
I'm not sure. I guess I'd have to reach out. And that was another question I was going to ask, like, who would I reach out to find out the specifics of some of the items? Would it be,
So whether an attorney starts at step 1 or step 8, I think the whole point is to get new hires. And so that was, I believe, that the bonus would be allotted or given to any new hire regardless of the step that they started.
any new hire? Well, I think what he's saying is in the contract, it says they have to be hired in at step 1 to get the bonus. And then this says according to the contract. So we have to like make sure that that person could get the bonus.
Sure.
See, if the MOU simply contradicts the master contract, the MOU controls. That's what it says. But if the MOU misquotes the master contract, then there's a little bit of an issue because it's saying it said something it didn't say.
So do you have a solution for that, or it's just a bad MOU because from the beginning we want to
It's a
scuttle the
question
MOU
for-
because
It's a
not-
question for the HR director, who was obviously not sought after for her advice on this section.
Okay, well, we
It's a
already.
question for
We
the
already
HR
established
director.
that Mark reached out to Melissa. So, and Keith did. So if you have a question, we're actually working toward a solution rather than because you feel cut out of the process, want to scuttle the MOU. Do you have suggested language, or have you talked and said this is a suggestion we could make to strike these 6 words? Or is it just,
I don't think that rushing to pass an MOU just because you finally got me out of the process is something that is wise.
I
And
think,
so that's why I'm asking these questions of our HR director, who the board just stated is responsible for interpreting this.
again, what I'm asking is, do you have any suggestion? I mean, you knew these questions in advance of this meeting, obviously, and we're holding them and waiting to be able to try to poke holes in this MOU, which clearly you don't want to see pass for reasons only you know. So what I'm asking is there a suggestion, or is this just let's try to poke holes in this? Could we just strike 3 or 4 words, the as stated in the current? Would that be satisfactory? And then we don't have to worry about they shall receive a $3,000 bonus after completion of their first year of employment. And we don't have to say as stated in the current contract. That way it won't do this contrary. And then we can actually move on from that. Or will we just kind of
Okay, so I'd like
roil
to
around
say
it?
that isn't, this
That was a
isn't
really
something we're
long
trying to like
question,
poke
Mr. Taylor.
holes in.
And I think the answer is I would just like to ask that of the HR director, as I already
Yeah.
did.
These are just like questions that I did ask Mr. Young that I didn't understand, as far as the MOU. And this was after it came out Friday, so I hadn't seen it since then, or hadn't seen it at all, really. Now, if you would like to strike that, that would be up to you.
So
Just
as stated.
Just saying that it's hard administratively with those words in the MOU.
Okay.
That's all.
So I'm just writing this down because this is part of the process, and I actually really appreciate kind of moving forward to solutions, which we're hoping for all along. So as stated in the current 24 to 27 union contract, if we strike that, then there's no conflicting language. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I
agree with
appreciate
that.
that very much. So I've got that written down, so we can make that a part of the motion, and then there's no contradictory language, and appreciate you pointing that out because even more improved upon.
Okay.
Melissa, I'm not sure if you didn't get the email, but I sent it to you on Wednesday, the 25th, and then actually on Monday, the 23rd as well.
I did receive one that I passed along, but the final one, I didn't see till Friday. Was it Thursday or Friday that you sent that email?
Wednesday. I sent the final
Oh,
on Wednesday.
okay, I'm sorry, that's when I saw it.
And when you say
Well, I
passed,
didn't see it then, honestly, since I was on vacation, but when I got back.
when you say passed along, Melissa, what do you mean by passed along?
It was an email that was sent to me that I just forwarded to somebody else.
And the somebody else, who's the somebody else?
That was James Loomis.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
So our county attorneys looked at this. He's given
They were
plenty
included
of-
on the same email.
Okay. He's given you plenty of responsive email, or responsive feedback. Is that correct?
I included Matthew, Karen, Melissa, and James on an email on Wednesday.
Okay.
You
With
included
the-
me on an email for the agenda item request, not necessarily any feedback from James.
The
Unless-
feedback I got from James was Wednesday, or early evening, and then I sent it out after that.
That was the week before.
The email I'm thinking of is the email you sent requesting the item to be on the agenda. Are you talking about another one?
This week, or you mean last Wednesday?
That was the last week. That was the week before, Mark.
No, I sent, the agenda request form with the final MOU was sent to Karen, Matthew,
Yes, that's
James,
what I'm
Melissa
talking
on
about.
Wednesday of this past week, the 26th.
Yeah, that was from you with the item that's on the agenda.
I guess my question, Mr. Nelson, is have you had feedback from the county attorney?
Multiple times, yes.
Thank you. So
But no-
not
from
just
no
that one
else.
email, but Mr. Loomis has been responsive and saying.
We have talked many times.
Okay, that's my point. Thank you.
Another question is the MOU on the table now omitted the salary schedule that the previously passed MOU had, laying out the which steps would be applicable to experienced hires. And this MOU refers instead to the master contract, which of course has 12 steps. So how would we interpret, or how would you interpret what the max step is? I'm just confused why that was removed.
From
I'm
item
not
B.
Sure.
Yes. So,
And if Ben or one of the attorneys would like to come up and talk about that, but basically it was like a hyper-speed acceleration that would create a circumstance where current employees in the attorney's office would be better off quitting and reapplying. And that was just a situation that neither Radig or I or the attorneys wanted to be in.
right, I understand that, but I'm saying if there's now 10 steps, the previous MOU restated those steps clearly, and that was removed from this version of the MOU.
Right, now that there's 10 steps, the previous MOU has 12 steps for the experience and where they start, so.
Like, it says
it would
newly
be-
hired assistant county attorneys shall be placed on the Appendix A salary schedule in accordance with the terms of the 2024 to 2027 union contract. That's not in the MOU that the board previously passed. It says according to the terms of this contract, and it listed them below for clarity. So I'm wondering why it's saying it's in accordance with the contract, which still has 12 steps.
Right,
Why was that removed? Was that, I mean, the previous version was reviewed by our labor attorney. This version, to your knowledge, was it reviewed by the labor attorney?
not to my knowledge.
And I think that was, why was that done? To save money? Because I recall a comment that,
We sent it to the county attorney.
Are you
Well, I
worried that
guess
the
if the
county
county
attorney
attorney's-
not effectively reviewing this contract?
no, that's not what I said, and he's not here to speak to it.
Right, I'm asking the question. Usually we go to outside legal counsel if we need to. Are you worried that he's not able to effectively?
No, not at all. I didn't say that. If we're going to assume that Melissa is the one interpreting this because it's what we've always done, then it seems odd to not have the labor attorney review a contract for the county, to be consistent.
There was an included salary schedule, was there not, on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that in there.
I mean the steps, the step 1 through 10 that
Right
says these many years, months' experience, this is the rate.
I
Is
mean,
this
that
not
was
it?
actually provided by the
No,
attorney.
No, that's not
general,
it.
Too,
I
so.
think he's referring to under 2B, where it says newly hired assistant county attorney shall be placed on the appendix salary schedule in accordance with the terms of the 24 427 union contract. So those terms are 12 steps, and the new contract's 10 steps. And I understand the 6 months and 12 months difference, just not knowing when there's a different amount of steps, how we're gonna place a new county attorney. That's,
Do you want to speak to that? I
Yeah.
know you're an attorney.
Okay.
Come on up. and-
Yeah.
Can I use this? Because I have it on my phone.
Okay, go ahead, can you see it?
Okay, yep.
Okay.
So when we talked about this, obviously the concern of the previous MOU was the fact that we didn't want people coming in, having 4 years of experience and getting paid at the rate of 8 years of experience. We understood the concern was people would end up quitting because we'd be training people making more money than they are. Okay? So this applies simply to, we agreed, and again, this was in the original MOU, so I don't know why Mr. Ong has a concern with it now, of the quicker advancement. And that's because when we speak to attorneys that we're trying to get hired, our salaries still are just not meeting it. And so the idea was we wanted to get them here and keep them here because we've had people here, they didn't even stay to keep their bonus, they left, they quit. Okay? So this language simply applies to the fact that that specific language of if you have 1 year of prior experience, you get credit for 1 year. So you're going on to step 1, which is on our contract, but now is 10 steps. So it doesn't change anything as far as what this MOU is concerned about. It's reflecting correctly. With regard to the other language that you guys were talking about, the concern about where the bonus. So again, in the previous MOU that Mr. Ong was in support of, that was always supposed to be a 3,000, going from 1,500 to 3,000 for new hires after completion of their first year of employment as stated. It's just referencing that statement that they have to complete the first year of employment before they're eligible for the bonus, not the amount of the bonus. So that language is correct, but if you take it out, it doesn't change anything. I would note, again, this is the 3rd MOU, and yet the chairman's concern for other union employees was never a concern until he made this a personal issue with himself. So his concern for all of you is a little biased. So the situation is not one person that stepped up to speak with you guys today mentioned that they're 2 years going on short staff. We are doing the work, each of us, of almost 3 attorneys. 3. And so the things that we added, the majority of this was in the original MOU, and he said, don't make haste to sign off on this now. Wasn't it just a few weeks ago he was saying, sign it now? Wasn't that hasteful? We're here, guys. You guys were wonderful to work with, and we made concessions, and you came at us, and there is a retention issue. We are tired. We are exhausted, and we've had many offers to leave our office. We like our jobs. We like what we do, and we care. But we need this. So please do the right thing. Thank you.
Again, I understand the 6 versus 12-month experienced hire thing. What I'm talking about and what was in the August 13th MOU was this, and Mr. Nelson can look at my screen and see it right here. It lays out the steps up to step 8, and it says 0 to 6 months, or in this case, it'd be 0 to 12 months, be step 1, 12 to 24, step 2. This lays it out because the MOU steps are different than the master contract steps. And I understand what you guys are saying, but you're attorneys, and I've heard we're attorneys, and it has to be in writing, and it's got to be proper, and it's got to be correct. This was taken out, and it now refers to the master contract. There's twice. I just mentioned twice where it refers to the master contract instead of restating the correct number of steps and the correct sign-on bonus. So, Melissa, you're recognized again.
Well, basically, I just also would like to know who am I going to communicate with to make sure that the MOU is being applied correctly, and to the separate employees, because there's different employees involved in different times and anniversary dates and all that. I just want to make sure I have my correct contact.
From the
for that.
board perspective?
Sure.
County Attorney Loomis, I think, would be the one to make sure.
And it's my understanding that James had briefed his office people about doing this very thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, you said you had some questions.
Well, I might have some of the same questions, so maybe just so that I'm clear, because ultimately payroll is going to be run through our office. And, you know, I think the communication, I know I've not been involved in this process at all. So I've just read this and tried to interpret of what we need to do if it passes. So from my understanding, Appendix A is going to be completely replaced, which is the pay schedules, by the appendix that's in here, and I assume I'll get a legible copy to change our tables.
Yeah, I apologize that the scan wasn't very good, so
Oh,
that's my
okay.
bad, and I didn't see that in the backup, so apologize.
Okay. So it references the effective date, and the effective date is clear that it's September 25th. However, it does say then later on that it will be made retroactive to September 1st. And since the appendix is replacing Appendix A, and Appendix A is effective January 1st with an MOU that went into effect, or July 1st with an MOU that changed it to January 1st, how far back do we go to correct anyone that may have be on a different table?
So you're saying the MOU as presented would actually retroactively go back to January 1st?
I'm not saying that. I'm
No, I
saying
just-
it's unclear to me of
Sure.
exactly how far back it goes if this table replaces Appendix
So
A.
the goal was that James has hired 2 attorneys in the month of September, new hires that are not privy to these benefits, and so we wanted to make sure that they would, because that's not gonna make them wanna stay here if we pass an MOU that new hires get benefits and they've been on the job 2 weeks and they got nothing. So that was the intention. If there's contradictory language, and if we can take September out and it's gonna be retroactive to July 1 or January 1, that's fine. But that was the point, was to cover those 2 new hires that we've got in September.
Okay, I guess what happens often in my office when we have these MOUs and contracts is that a couple years down the road, somebody questions something because it may have been forgotten what the intent was in the beginning, and then we try to figure out what was the intent of this. And so it makes it a little bit difficult, because things are kind of difficult to interpret anyway. So what's going through my mind is, do we need to correct payrolls for individuals back to a certain point? And if so, when?
Well, I would say for the 2 new ones, I think the one started yesterday and the other one was on the 12th. So we would go back to their first, the older one to their first pay period, and this other one that I believe started today would start today.
Okay. So the pay tables are gonna say effective July 1st, but they're really not effective until September 1st. So is it possible to change that date so that it
Yeah.
reflects what we're actually doing? Just to make it more clear down the road.
Totally fine.
Of exactly what's going on here. And aside from that, I think everything's doable on the payroll side, as far as implementing the extra days, and then the, yeah, I think that was the main question, is that effective date, so.
What's that need to be changed to?
September 1st. And then I think there may be a couple, Melissa may be able to address it, I think there may be a couple of employees that potentially could be in a different step because of this, if you look at their years of service, because I think at 4.5 years, then they'd reach the top step, if I'm calculating it correctly. So we would correct those back to September 1st also, so they would have a couple of payroll corrections.
Mr. Chair.
One additional question.
We'll have to come to the.
I'm sorry, you'll have to come up if you're going to give a explanation.
I think he's referencing the latter part of number 4. It says September 1st, so as to be applicable to the 2 new attorneys.
Yes, so current employees, we were never intending for it to be retroactive. It will be moving forward. This was only for the benefit of the newly hired, now Now we're only in one because one decided not to come. So one attorney, and the only thing that this would be applicable to is his bonus language. And everything else will come as time comes. So again, this is not restrictive language in the current MOU.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is the process of the bonus, as the way we do all bonuses and supplemental pay is that the department head or elected official submits a letter to payroll to have that happen. And I believe that James has done that for the individuals who have received that $3,000 bonus already. And so that's kind of the process that we usually go. So there shouldn't be any HR obligation or anything on the supplemental pay and keeping track of that year anniversary. Thank you.
Any other county employees wish to address the board?
Dan Heisel, County Conservation Department. I've sat here and listened to this, and we've talked about union employees. I know Tina mentioned all the employees in the county. I don't have a union in my office. My employees, it's me up here fighting for them. The board, that's my job for the board. I don't know what my board thinks about this. I was out of state last week. Got part of the minutes, actually the story out of the newspaper, what was going on. I did not receive a phone call. I was not polled. I did not see the memo until I was 5 minutes from the courthouse this afternoon. So I have not been prejudiced in any way, but if I don't fight for my employees, what's right and what's equal. We talk about bonuses. We had contracts opened up during COVID. We had bonuses given with ARPA money. I was just asked earlier, well, your employees got it, didn't you? No, they didn't. My employees asked why. It was a union thing. I'm not against unions. I support the union. My office is not a union. But if I don't stand up here and tell you that I have young employees, the retention is a concern of mine, that if we don't treat them like the other employees, we may lose them. The last 3 employees I've hired in the last 2 years, it's been slim pickings what we get for resumes to get a qualified employee. I feel a lot of empathy for James and the attorney's office for not being able to get those. We can't fill our seasonal employees. We cannot fill all our seasonal positions. We do seasonal because we don't want to run a full-time employee. We run them 9 months, so we don't have to pay benefits. So we can't fill those seasonal positions. Maybe we should come in and ask for a full-time position so we can get that job done. But we're trying to do it a different way. So what I'm asking is, when you look at this across the board, to be fair to the non-wage employees that don't have a union fighting for them, it's just me or the Board of Supervisors if they're going to do something for the non-wage, for the wage employees. I answer those questions all the time to my employees. Why not us? So I'm going to end with that. I just hope that if you pass this MOU, that you look at equity across to the wage plan employees as well, because they do feel left out. And it's hard to get them, let's go, when they see it happening in other departments and they're not getting it. And then I had a conversation with Supervisor Bittinger before the meeting, didn't we, Dan? And I talked about all the supervisors I've worked with in my 39 years. And I was proud of this board until today. Get your house in order. You're strong, thick-skinned, good people. Work it out. because you serve us as employees, and what's happening here today, man, I haven't seen it in 39 years. Strong personalities. I respect each and every one of you. I get along with all of you. I've had disagreements with Mr. Taylor, and we've worked them out. All I can say is I hope we can get past this. You get your house in order and work together, because it's us, the employees, that you need to serve, as well as the residents of Woodbury County. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other county employees wish to address the board? Do you have any more questions, Melissa or Michelle? No one else? Okay. I believe that MOUs should be limited and focused because the provisions can be taken away, unlike a master contract. I've expressed my issues with this process, and people continue to gaslight by saying, I don't understand what your problem is or what your issue is with this. My issue with the precedent of it, in particular, advancing raises 6 months early for one union and not 5 others, and not wage plan and not percentage deputies, I think is a bad precedent. I'm hearing the same from county employees, and a lot of them said that tonight. And I think that should be taken seriously. Mr. Taylor and Mr. Radig, who pushed originally for this, for new liaisons to this union, won't be around next year to deal with the consequences and the repercussions of what this MOU would do. We've heard from our county employees that they want fairness. We have 2 groups, I believe the deputies and the jailers, up for either wage reopeners or full contract negotiations for next July 1. And they're watching what this board does. And we have 4 other union groups that are going to have to stick it out for 2 more years if they don't get a similar MOU. And to try and stop discussion of those concerns from representing hundreds of employees from Wage Plan and 5 other unions is ridiculous. I understand the narrative out there that because I took issue with some individuals within one union, that I hate all unions. But I've spoken to a lot of union members and a lot of wage plan employees over the last week, and I didn't get that back from them. A lot of them thanked me for providing them with the information. A lot of them said it felt rushed. And we heard from a lot of those people tonight. We can make changes, make amendments, change some words. I'm surprised no one's mentioned that we might need to replace 2 pages that are they're blurred out. You can't read them. But if this passes, Mr. Taylor and Mr. Radig won't have to deal with the precedent it sets. I will. Mr. Bittinger will. And Mark Nelson very probably will. And I would ask you guys to consider the precedent you're setting. And I also want to say this. The challenge from our position is that every time we do something right for somebody, we're insensitive if we're not doing something for everybody. That's a quote from 2023 Keith Raddick. The board should not pass this MOU. It opens a can of worms for retention that will upset a lot of county employees and a lot of unions. Clearly, there has not been thorough thought on this. It was not run by the labor attorney. I mean, if you're going to tell me that James Loomis approved of a couple blurred out pages and a page number in the middle of the page and contradictory 3 different effective dates, I mean, no. This is not how Woodbury County has approached MOUs, and this is not a good precedent to set. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I absolutely hope the board supports this MOU. It was something that the chair pushed for time and time again. And now, after being cut out appropriately by the majority of the board for obvious reasons that the public fully understands, he's obviously not supportive. I find it ironic that both he and Supervisor Bittinger said, deal with this, and then we'll deal in a subsequent MOU with retention. Just get through this one, and then we'll have another MOU for retention. But now that you're not involved with it, I understand that it couldn't be very well. The union that represents our county attorneys, I understand why you wanted to work with 2 new supervisors, and I think it's laudable. Yeah, there's a couple of pages that are blurry. We'll fix 6 words, and this will pass. Because for a little while, the majority was in doubt, but the majority still rules, and the majority is still in charge of this board. And I would just say this, Supervisor Bittinger, thank you for advancing this. I know that you have been called a liar by Mr. Ong's social media. Welcome to the club. So to the attorneys, Athena and Trevor, and all of you that have worked on this language, it's good language. I would like to be able to do something comparable, but right now we have 7 out of 16, and we're trying to effectively address that issue. It's a good MOU. It strikes a balance. I think it's reasonable. I'm going to fully support it, and I bet this board will as well. So thank you guys for getting it done.
It's not the fact that I was removed that I'm not supportive of this MOU. And if anyone thinks that, it's kind of hard to explain why I would continue to want the MOU to be signed. Well, people pretty much hate me. It's the fact that it was broadened to include retention benefits, and this one in particular that is not given to any other county employees. And you're not hearing up here, I think everyone should be listening. You're not hearing up here board members say, yeah, that's a good idea. Michelle, how much does it cost to advance raises every 6 months to January 1 for Mr. Heisel's guys or the sheriff's guys or anyone else? You're not hearing that from this board because that's not a commitment, that's not an assurance you've been given. You've been given the assurance of, we want this MOU signed, period. And Bittinger did lie to me. That's not a claim.
Mr.
No,
Chair,
I am
we're not
speaking.
gonna-
I am speaking.
Listen, we're not going to get into, okay, you can
Mr.
bang
Taylor?
your little gavel
Mr.
all you
Taylor?
want. You're not going to.
Mr. Taylor, I am speaking.
Your rules say that you're not going to question the
Draw your
motivations
attention
of
to the
people.
bylaws and parliamentary procedure,
the
which says
rules
the
say-
chair will recognize the speakers, and there will be 1 speaker at a time.
You do not question the motivations of a publicly elected official. That's
I am
in your
not
rules.
questioning his motivations, I'm questioning a statement of fact.
It's
I was
ridiculous.
told by Mr. Bittinger that he would stand firm on our original offer, and I was told that he would resist the motion to reassign liaisons, including himself. And he did not do that. That is not a claim, that is a fact. And that's why that's in the backup, and it brings me no pleasure to do that.
He's not a liar. Don't call him that. Just like I told you not to call those people what you did, which is a reason they didn't want to work with you. We have to. But you don't call this person a liar, you don't call anybody up here that.
It is
So
what
let's
happened,
move
Mr.
the
Taylor.
question.
It is what happened, Mr.
I-
Taylor.
We're not going to get into, let's move the question.
Were you there?
No, and I don't do
Okay, you
Jedi
weren't
mind
there.
tricks
Okay, you
to
weren't
control
there.
this board either.
Next
It's delusional.
speaker.
You know, maybe circumstances changed that made, you know, Matt,
Maybe you left
made
out
Mark
facts.
or made Dan change their minds. But one thing to make clear is that this is not intended to be an across-the-board for all employees. This is intended for recruitment and retention in the attorney's office, which has for 2 years been extremely understaffed. And to anybody that can't understand that, I'm sorry, that's why it's there. It's for recruitment and retention in an office that is severely understaffed and overworked. And I have done so much to try to like tone down rhetoric and agenda items and conversations. And I've tried to offer like an out for individuals to save face. Those are refused. All this is about this MOU right now, doing what's right for some employees that are being overworked. It is not to set precedents for future contracts. This is an MOU where there is accelerated raises put in there. And that's why it's there. So if anybody else expects this from the Board of Supervisors for their employees, I'm sorry, it's not happening from me, and I doubt that other supervisors would support it as well. I'm sorry that somebody decided to encourage you to come and ask for that. I will support the MOU, and I think the Board of Supervisors will pass this 4-1, although I can't speak for everybody.
I've got a few questions, if you would, Matthew. So on the 6-month, twice a year pay increase versus the 1.5% twice times, versus 3.
Sure.
You said that that's unfair to other unions. Is that also unfair that the attorneys union got a 9% raise and every other union got 3%?
No, because that was obviously targeting wages, and it's a simpler issue than extending a benefit. A wage adjustment that's appropriate for the position, I think, is something that, that's the reason why we all supported it, and it was so easy to pass.
But we just heard Athena come up here a little bit ago that a new hire left for more money. So wouldn't it be in our best interest to continue to work on wage increases?
Again, we have to think about precedent and what we're doing for all of our employees, not just a small group. Would it help the sheriff's jailers?
It might.
Yeah, it would.
And what's wrong with if they come into contract negotiations and ask for that, which they're facing a serious retention issue, too. Been talking to some of their guys for, really since we did negotiations last January. If they ask for that, I don't see any problem in that.
What about all of them?
It depends on the situation. That's why every negotiation is different. We don't get in one giant room with every union, every representative, and we all barter at the same time. Secondary roads got totally different things than the jailers did, and the jailers got totally different than the county attorney. Nothing has been fair. It never has been.
Well, to an extent, public safety is, by code, different as far
Sure.
as what they can negotiate.
Sure. But this is not, I've heard you say this over and over again, and it gets my goat, is that it's a gift. I don't think it's a gift. I think it's a fix. This problem existed when PJ was here. I've been hearing about this for 4 years. And we've tried, this board, before I was even here, you guys did a lot of work. Bonuses, sign-on bonuses. We directed James to be able to bring someone in higher at the appropriate, we've done a lot of different things, and it hasn't moved the needle at all. At all. And I feel bad for James. I think he's a good man. I really do. And it's nothing that the people in that attorney's office are doing to him, but when they're 50% short-staffed, I've got a good friend in this county that pays a large number of taxes that his case was completely muffed. And it's not because we have incompetent people in that office. It fell through the cracks. And he's asking me, what do I spend all this money for?
Right.
I can't even get my criminal prosecuted that assaulted me. I want this fixed. I didn't want to do this. I wanted like hell for you to do it, and you, rightly so. I prodded you, didn't I? Talk to James. Find an MOU. Let's fix this. I'm tired of hearing of it. But now what I'm not hearing is, what specifically don't you like about this new? Is it the 1.5 versus 3%? Is that, or is it that and the bonus? Is it those two things?
Well, those are two major things, yes. The bonus also, I mean, the MOU literally incentivizes an office that's not fully staffed, because when it's fully staffed, they stop getting the bonuses. And that's kind of counterintuitive.
But in the meantime, their wages are going to continue to climb. And I think that will be more competitive to keep those people here.
Well, I doubt that the attorney that unfortunately reneged on their September 30th hire date did so because they're not getting a cost of living increase 6 months early in the preceding fiscal year. It's probably about wages. And again, the thing I opened my commenting with was, in the time since the board removed me from this process, they haven't improved the recruitment wages at all. They've only added retention benefits that apply immediately to those that are in the office. And again, this is an issue that has resonated with a lot of county employees. So if you're telling me, is this a problem I have? Yes, it is. And it's also a problem that a lot of other county employees, wage plan and union, have as well. And you are going to be opening yourself up for a heck of a year next year when you have 2 contracts up, you have 4 that are locked in that would need MOUs to be treated equally, and they are going to be asking for this.
Nothing has ever been treated equally, and we are seeking to fix a problem here.
Yes, we
Just
are.
like we're going to have to probably do something to fix a problem with the jailers, because they also have, they're down probably 8 or 9 people. So,
But because we have 6 unions, we need to roll out solutions for retention that apply broadly, that do not target one group. The recruitment issue was so compelling for this board to tackle because no other department can say they are down so much of their staff. But there's other departments that can make the case that they have a hard time retaining people.
I think Woodbury County employs a lot of good people, but if some of these departments are consistently 90 to 100% fully staffed, I don't believe that there is a retention issue.
And can we bring this to a vote at some
I would
point
just like to
tonight?
say I would just like to say 2 more things that I was unaware of tonight. Kenny, I'm sorry that nobody in your office thinks they can talk to me. You and I probably talk more than any other director in this county. You typically ask me to do something, you say jump, and I ask how high. And I'm really sad that there's nobody here that wants to or thinks that they could actively talk to me. And Tina, same thing. There's 2 gals in your office that I've known far, far longer than I've ever been a part of this, that I see out of work all the time. And every time I've come in there, I feel like I'm a distraction because all the gals are talking to me and I feel like I'm taken away from their work. And it's really disheartening to hear that none of them think they can talk to me, especially when I've worked with secondary roads, I've worked with jailers the last 2 years, and those guys call me all the time. We'll meet private, we'll run at each other out on the street, weekend, whatever, they'll bring something up. Doesn't matter if it's secondary road guys, they'll call me, they'll text me. I've had nothing but good things. And I hope that we can do things to keep these people retained and to continue to recruit, because we have a crisis in this country with high school graduates. And it's not going to get better. People aren't having kids. It's the reality of it. But that's probably the biggest shock to me, is that we've got 2 huge departments in here that don't feel that I'm personable enough. And that's probably something that I need to do better. But I'm wrestling in my head because I've never had anything but good interactions. And so I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I will be supportive of this. If you're worried about some of the language, if you're worried about the scanned page that I wrongly submitted that's bleached through, more than happy to get all these things corrected and fixed. I think it's time to close the book on this deal, and I hope that this works. Attorneys, I hope it works. But we've got a tough road ahead with any of the unions, and so they're going to bargain for what they think works. And I think some of the things in this MOU, there are private attorneys that are getting these benefits, and they are what is stealing people away from here. And I absolutely believe that. Thank you.
Well, private attorneys, no doubt, can get 6-month raises when they don't have a board that budgets based on the fiscal year. What is the purpose of a fiscal year budget? When
If you take a
salaries
step
are a great
5,
expense of that.
if you take a step 5 employee and give them a 1.5 and then a 1.5, it's a difference of like $60.
No, you're earning the wage plus overtime, plus retirement for 6 months that other people are not getting. From January to June, you're getting half.
How is a salaried employee, Mr. Ron, getting
They're not getting
overtime?
overtime.
Can you explain how a salaried employee gets overtime?
No, I don't mean for them. I mean for anyone that wants to be treated equally.
Okay.
This
We
would
were
apply.
talking about this MOU, and we did the math on it, and honestly, the carrot isn't even that big. I'm like, they're willing to negotiate on this, and it's basically, I think at the highest pay scale, it was like $120 in a year, or $60 in a year. It was like, you're literally asking for nothing, and they're having to carry over a budget in their department from understaffing of like $1 million a year. There's $1 million, and they're asking to spend like $800. That's ridiculous to say it's budget busting.
So then why did you not support Mr. Loomis's $2,000 retention bonuses for the other union group when they had the money?
I don't know what you're talking about.
April of last year.
I don't
The
remember.
board
Last
did
year
not
was
support
different.
this. The board did not support retention bonuses to another ASME union group
We put it in the contract.
based on the precedent it would set.
Yeah, we put it in the contract, though, when we negotiated.
Can we move to a vote?
So why don't we do that?
Could we move to a vote?
According to the rules, if 2/3 or 4 out of the 5 want to close debate, then that is what happens.
Okay, so can we, how do you want to do that, Mr. Chair? You want to poll for consensus, or can I make a motion to call the question? Can you give us some semblance of a roadmap?
I'll first ask if there is further discussion. Hearing none, I'll request a roll call vote.
Bittinger,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Raddick,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Ung.
Nay. The motion passes 4-1, unopposed. Item 10 for secondary roads includes A for action, approval of a federal aid replacement fund project agreement for project numbered parent 153.
Good afternoon, Mark Nara, Woodbury County Engineer. This first federal aid project agreement is for a federal aid funded bridge replacement on Hancock Avenue. It's between 280th and 290th Street. This is a typical agreement that is signed for a federal aid project for bridge replacement or STP money. I recommend approval of the agreement.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B is approval of plans for project number parent 153-5E97.
Parent 150 is good enough. That's the same final plans for that bridge project for submittal to DOT. We're proposing a January 22nd, 2025 letting.
I'll move approval of the plans.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C is approval of federal aid replacement fund project agreement for project number parent 150.
It should be 153, I think. This project is the paving of PCC overlay on County Road K45 from the county line to D53, just south of Salix. 6-inch PCC overlay. We are not going through the town of Sloan. There is a proposal to do some work on the south part of Sloan, but they have recently improved their own road within the city limits. And we're not planning to participate on the full project all the way through town. This is a project where we have $1.8 million from the MPO, the Regional Planning Agency, SRTPA is the designation for them, and 1.8 million max, or 1.603 million maximum, 80% of the cost. I recommend approval.
I'd move it.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 10D is approval of plans for project number Perrin 150.
The proposed project is also a January 22nd, 2025 letting, also through the DOT process.
I move approval.
Second the motion by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 11 from the Deputy County Auditor, Dr. Michelle Scaff, for action is approved $50,000 to $100,000 as a group purchase threshold, retroactive to July 1, and direct Deputy Scaff to amend the fixed asset policy and bring back for board approval.
Thank you. So this item came up in our audit. Last week, we had 5 or 6 auditors in our office doing our annual financial review, and they brought to our attention that there's a new government accountability standard that we have to keep track of our fixed assets group purchases. In other words, if we buy 10 radios for X amount of dollars, we have to keep track of that group of items if it's purchased in one transaction. So they recommended $50,000 to $100,000 for the threshold. The higher the number, the fewer assets that we'll be recording, and the fewer that we'll have to maintain as far as disposals of individual items. It's going to be a difficult item to manage due to one item may be damaged and then we have to dispose of it and keep the rest of them. So the recommendation is $50,000 to $100,000. The board has to set that limit, and then I'll revise the policy and bring it back for your approval next week, if that will work for you.
Do you have a recommendation? I know you're asking us, but is there anything?
I would recommend $100,000, and it's retroactive to July of 2023. That isn't a typo. It's due to our 24 audit, which they'll find all of those group assets, and we'll have them recorded in our current audit.
All right.
I'll approve the $100,000 as a group purchase threshold retroactive to July 1st of '23, and directing Deputy Scaff to amend the fixed asset policy to bring back for board approval.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Bittinger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 11 from the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Bittinger. Item A for information is discussion about the future of Rolling Hills Service Region physical property.
Yeah, after July 1st of 2025, all the mental health regions will be dissolved with the HHS alignment, and so they cannot own physical property. We're part of the Rolling Hills Mental Health Community Services, and anyhow, they are just, you can see in the background, the email from Don Metzer, the CEO, just requesting the boards to know, do we want to sell the property and get that money back, or do we want to donate it to the service provider, deed it to them so they continue services where they're at. So I will, for next week, I'll bring this back. I'll have the exact amount that Woodbury County would recoup back if we decided to say, sell the property and get that back. I'll have that for us, but this is just a discussion. The meeting's on October 9th, when they're gonna have the governance board meeting. They wanna know what's, from each county, what is the county board of supervisors, what is the recommendation, either to deed it over entirely free to the service providers or sell it at a very low cost. So that's all. It's just, what do we wanna do? Just get this conversation going. And like I said, next week I'll get the exact amount of money Woodbury County would would recoup back if we sold the properties, so.
Do you mind if I just ask? a
Yeah,
quick-
that's
So-
all I have, yeah, it's just.
So we're talking
make
about the crisis center? Or we're talking about the Tri-View
It would be
building?
I believe the crisis center.
Over on
'cause the-
Outer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the regions bought that, and of course Woodbury County was part of the, there's 10 counties in the current Rolling Hills Services District. So it was, the 10 counties bought into that, so we'd get a portion, whatever we paid in, we just get that back. But I will have those numbers for us. I apologize, I didn't get a chance to get those exact numbers from Sheila Martin, but I will get those, exactly what properties for sure, so.
Okay.
To bring back next week, so.
Thank you.
Yep. But that's just a discussion to begin to think about what do we want to do, and so I'll get that information. I'll email it out to everyone ahead of the meeting, just so you can have those numbers. But it was a consensus of the board, the governance board, that there'd be probably some problems if we try to sell everything, potentially sell everything, and then have to have certain agreements of who gets what. And there was a thought of maybe just donating everything to the service providers, because a lot of them cannot raise the capital to purchase the buildings they're in. Thus, that's why the region bought the buildings. And so some of them said they could probably try to find financing, or if they could be like I offered, what if we did a forgivable loan to them? You know, that if they could improve function of service over so many years, they could have a forgivable loan against the building. But that's something for us to bring back, to talk about. And what I have to bring back on the 9th is recommendations from this board. What do you guys want to do? So, for the Rolling Hills region, so.
I would just say one thing. I don't know that us selling that property, other than Siouxland Mental Health or some other provider, is going to want to go into that building because it's so specific to that.
Right.
It's not like you're going to open a
Correct.
5-person hotel
Right.
or something like that. So I would be in favor. I think we were 49% when we went in, something along those
Yeah, we
lines.
were kind of higher, yeah. out of all
So
of them, yeah.
I'd be in favor of seeing if we could either donate it somehow, look at what is, but again,
Yeah.
maybe a further discussion.
Okay.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it should be something that service providers used it and taken care of it. It's basically their building. It's just not been owned by them.
Okay. All right. And then, I'll bring this back next week, so I'll get us, like I said, I'll get us the numbers on that, and the exact deeds, all that, so.
Any other discussion on item A? Item B for action is approval of opioid remediation settlement request and a proposal from Sky Ranch Behavioral Services for 3 FTE positions.
Yeah, Mrs. Bertrand wasn't here tonight. She's not feeling well, so I was gonna just ask to postpone till next week on this item. She wanted to be here, so,
Move to table this item.
yeah.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Nelson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 13 is reports on committee meetings.
Well, I had quite a few there. CERTPA, which was responsible for paying for item 10C, we approved our long-range transportation plan. Actually, we got a draft. I have a copy of that here if anybody would like it from the board. Good news on the meeting place for Simcoe. That road should be open sometime soon. Highway 20, that road is. From Buchanan to the bypass, they're looking to try to get that part open so that all the meetings with DOT and Simcoe and CERTs don't have to drive miles around. After that meeting, CERTs was held. We got our cyber coverage updated. We updated personnel policies. We're looking at grants and future expansion of facilities. Not only the facilities there that were just built, but a facility potentially in Lamar's or in Cherokee, as those are also in CERT's market areas. They're looking at app options for bus riders. The city itself is doing an app, and they're going to try something, and we're going to see how the city fares with it before we start looking at that kind of expense. After that, we had Wickertiff, which we discussed the bylaws, the new grant cycle for the Housing Trust Fund. We submitted our application for Michelle, for your notes there in the upcoming budget. It's probably going to be about 25% higher local match because of the new grants. amounts and what that match percentage will be next year. We also discussed how another cog in Iowa has become a developer using the Homes for Iowa program. And we discussed not wanting to do that because we spend all of our time and resources on the rehab program, and we have a waiting list the way it is. But that could be a potential for the county to pursue in the future. There's obviously land. We auctioned some off for $100 a lot today. So if you wanted to create a partnership with a contractor and do the Homes for Iowa, bring those in on a semi and have them built, and then you would have to sell them, but with certain income restrictions and guidelines. It could be a good way to grow the tax base in Woodbury County and in some of our other cities in Woodbury County. And that's all I have.
Item 14 is citizen concerns.
Okay, good evening again. Tina Bertrand, Woodbury County Treasurer, just to kind of try to address some of the concerns that Supervisor Nelson was bringing up. I am sorry that the staff in my department does not feel comfortable talking to supervisors. I don't necessarily think they should be that way. I do know that as their leader of the office, I think sometimes they want to go through me only because some of that's a respect thing, and that they, they actually, I'm the one who hires them, and I work with them, and I try to hear them. I wasn't getting into the detail on staffing, and Supervisor Radig, I understand that when we get a staffing level of 50% deficit, it's a major concern for our community, it's a major concern for our county, and it's certainly a concern for that department. Couple years ago when we were talking about the sheriff's office and the jailers, they were running a 35% deficit or something like that. For a department like mine, it's a little bit different. So we have a constant deficit. We are constantly turning over. I've turned over 14 employees in 3 years. It's a 23% deficit annually. And that has a burden on some of the people in our office. I don't know if there's any other things that I can help you with. Other than our office is always open, I've invited you all to come to some of our staff meetings. I know that Supervisor Bittinger has attended. I know that you've been by to talk to people, and I don't want you to feel like you're a burden or a distraction in the office. I think they do appreciate you coming by. And I think they recognize that most of the board members are busy, and that they don't necessarily expect them to come by. So I do want to at least say that, but I can't deny the fact that they don't feel like they're heard. That's a real thing in our community. I can tell you that our department, just kind of writing down my notes right now, out of the 20 employees, I have 3 that have more than 10 years of experience. 3. That's it. I have 2 that have 7, 1 that has 5, and one that has 1.5, and everybody else has less than a year. And trying to serve the community with that level of expertise is difficult, and they work hard. They try to learn hard. They learn fast. So this just kind of goes back to the same thing, that it's a unique and diverse group that we have, but there are 400 people. And retention is important to everybody. And my concern is I want it to be heard. I want it to be heard by this board. There's a difference between recruitment and retention. We've had these kind of infightings going on a long time. I think Dan, and I don't want to call him out, but I just did, about getting the house in order. Yeah, some of these things procedurally maybe don't make sense. I think some of these things, even trying to do the best that we can, we have to balance it with everybody in our community. And I said it earlier, tax collecting, we just collect the money that makes the world go round. So I know that this is just citizen concern, so I can't address anything else. I think I addressed everything you said, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trevor Brass, Woodbury County Attorney's Office. Hallelujah, we finally got it passed. There's a lot of concern about, fairness. Well, fairness is truly the bottom concern. Why don't we pay everyone the exact same salary that works here? Y'all are Republicans, you understand the answer, because it's what the market will bear. The public sector competes with the private sector for resources, among other things, labor, right? Woodbury County, you compete against private sector employers and other public sector employers. So yeah, I mean, the attorneys are probably the most well-paid employees. Is that fair in the strictest sense? Probably not. Do other employees work hard for less money? Yes, they do. Do employees making far less money than I do work probably just as hard as I do? Yeah, they probably do. They work difficult jobs. They're important too, but again, if fairness is truly their concern, why does everyone get the exact same salary, $50,000 a year? You know why that wouldn't work. You all know why. Okay? Thank you.
Dan Heisel, Conservation. I was a little harsh, Tina, but I got carried away. But I talked to my managers and my deputy director about expectations. If we don't tell our staff what we want or expect of them, they're not going to perform to that level. If I don't tell you what I need, I'm guilty. I've got a great relationship with Supervisor Nelson as our liaison. I need to be talking to him more and say, hey, how come our employees aren't getting that raise or that bonus, or what can we do? So I'm going to take some of that. So part of it's my fault, but I'm going to work on expectations and sharing with you what my department needs. And when we're up here, I don't take it personal. It's business. So I hope I wasn't too harsh before, but I respect this board. I've seen you do such good things. And I was so happy when I got here. I've been here 6 years. It's been great. You've got so much done. I just hope with this fracture, we can find a way to mend it. Because you guys, as 5, work a lot better together than 1. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. You're fine, Dan. You don't need to apologize.
What?
I said you're fine. You don't need to apologize.
Pat Gill, Woodbury County Auditor, and as a result of the bylaws, the parliamentarian. Just to be transparent, I want to talk about some of these things that occurred procedurally here tonight. And when you're the parliamentarian, it's kind of hard because you're kind of at a disadvantage because you aren't really supposed to be offering your own opinion here. One of the things that I just want to say is during the public hearing earlier about the windmills, when people are talking and addressing one another, that is something the chairperson has asked me to remind folks, to remind him that when they're not addressing the board, that they need to be reminded of that. I've had that discussion with the chairperson. So that's why I do it, and sometimes I feel like the bad guy when we're doing that. So I'd appreciate if we could kind of work together to do a little bit better job on that. When it comes to the bylaws, wasn't really able to express completely what I felt about that, is that when the 4-1 vote to install Mr. Nelson and Mr. Radig as that to negotiate the MOU. And at that time I said, I believe my quote was, you are overriding the bylaws. And that's the truth as far as I believe, is because those are day-to-day operations. It's always been the chairperson is working with the Department of Human Resources about, when they go into those negotiations. And those negotiations aren't subject to the open meetings law, so I really don't know what takes place when the chairperson talks to the Human Resources Director on that, and then what kind of conversations you have among yourselves, because it's not part of the open meetings law. You folks are all involved in that negotiating process. Okay, so, but when it said 4-1, that's why I interpret the bylaws that way. But what the bylaws also say is that the officers shall be a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and a clerk to the board. These officers should perform the duties as prescribed by the Iowa Code, these bylaws, and the parliamentary authority adopted by the board in descending order. So when that statement was made earlier, and this is something that I remember speaking to Supervisor Clausen about years ago, was that you can do anything you want if you get 3 votes and it's lawful. So that's what that meant is, and that's what I interpret the bylaws to say that way. But I just felt it was important to bring it up, is that that is something that's unprecedented, is to go beyond that. And it is, as Dan said, 38 years. I've been here 28 years, and I've never seen what took place here this evening. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, I was trying to, as far as a motion when you disagree with the chairperson, that motion, I couldn't get a clear motion. Okay, but that's when, if the chairperson doesn't, if a member of the assembly, and the other thing that I want to talk about is that there are also rules for small assemblies like this. And actually, after everything got kind of out of control there for a while, you folks really had some very good discussions about what this was all about. And that, their bylaws really, what they're are wrote to deal with is at large assemblies. But in small assemblies, you're supposed to have that give and take where the chairperson can participate in those discussions, because in large ones, they don't do that. But that's what small assemblies are allowed to do, that free-flowing discussion that you have there. And so, that's a good thing. But then we got to the point, like I said, I couldn't get a motion there. But if the assembly doesn't believe that the chairperson is acting in accordance with the way they're supposed to do things, as you do stand up, and it's up to 3 times, is that you can restate that motion and call for that vote. And as I said before, it's not debatable. It goes right to a roll call vote. But we didn't have a motion before us, a clear motion. I don't know if you disagree with that, but it wasn't, and that's what I was trying to get on what rule you were trying to get to. The other is, and you can, what Mr. Raddick was talking about was the removal of the presiding officer from the chair at that point. That can take place, and you can vote on that, and the vice chair would take over at that point. And I'm just doing this to be transparent, so in case anything like this ever happens, which I hope it never happens again during this period of time, but that is the process. It can take place. So I just want to be transparent and try to clear things up. After they did get a little bit out of control, I thought that it went back nicely, but there's one other point that I want to make is about the bylaws, is that this was the manner of acting. A member or any other elected official of the county shall address the chairperson and confine their remarks to the question before the board, and shall be respectful of other elected officials and avoid referencing or questioning the motives of another elected official. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again. I apologize, my voice is going out today. I just wanted to thank Mr. Bittinger, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Raddick for staying open-minded through this process, for actually learning about our office and understanding how the MOU will actually affect our office. Unlike the misconceptions that Mr. Ung continues to convey to people that are not familiar with our office, the majority of these wage benefits are for new hires. And the reason I say that is because the majority of my office is already at the top rate of pay. So this will affect us not at all. In addition to that, I appreciate Mr. Bittinger, you being open-minded to the fact that you were listening to the facts and not just forming the misconceptions, again, that Mr. Ung continues to convey about how that process went down. And I believe you said after you heard what I said about how the process went with the first MOU, which again is 90% incorporated into this MOU that was recently approved, and which Mr. Ung continues to now disapprove, you obviously listened to that and made a change in your mind. It's unfortunate that Mr. Ung continues to be unprofessional in his behavior, to name call. Obviously, you're allowed to change your mind, and that's what people do when they hear all the facts presented. So we appreciate you greatly. We really, really hope that this is going to help my boss, that is going to bring in new employees, because that's what this MOU was designed for, and it was also designed to give a little bit of a benefit to the people who are breaking their backs, working day to day, doing the work that we're currently doing. Thank you.
Any other citizen concerns? Hearing none, item 15, any board concerns? We are adjourned.